Okay, it seems to have flattened a little bit at 14, so I'll get started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to September 16, 2020 meeting of the Cohasset Public Schools School Committee. Pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20B, this meeting is being held virtually in accordance with Governor Baker's declaration of a state of emergency in this Commonwealth. It's being broadcasted live on Facebook, and it's being broadcasted live on Cohasset 143 TV. To get started with just my typical procedural comment that if you have any public comment, just make sure that that comment isn't related to any sort of issues that are already on the agenda. Otherwise, just wait until that point in the agenda to raise that issue. But if you have a point of discussion that's not related to something that's on the agenda, please feel free to raise that during the public comment section of the meeting. So at this point, I'd like to take a roll call attendance. Please indicate your presence by saying present when I call your name in alphabetical order. Mrs. Cleary?
Present.
Mr. Kearney?
Present.
Mrs. Marr?
Present.
Mrs. St. Ange is not present at this time. She indicated that she may be late to the meeting. She had another professional engagement. And Craig McClellan, present. At this point, I'll open it up to any public comment, members of the public that have any public comment. I'll give it a few seconds as I wait for any of those comments to be generated, the Q&A feature in the Zoom here. Okay, I don't see any, and I'm sure as we move along here, we'll be able to take plenty of questions. So at this point, I'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the superintendent's report, and I turn the meeting over to Dr. Patrick Sullivan, our superintendent of schools here in Cohasset.
Thank you, Chairman McClellan, and welcome everyone. And it's an exciting time here in Cohasset as we get closer and closer to having our kids back for the first time since March 13th. Very excited for them to come in. You know, it's great being in the buildings and planning and everything, but it's just not school until you have the kids here. So we're extremely excited about it. We've been doing some fabulous professional development led by Dr. Scollins and the folks that she has had come in to be able to work with our staff. We've been working really hard to get the buildings ready. Thanks to our facilities, our amazing custodians, Herculean effort, the whole team really coming together. Let's start by just showing, if I can get them on my screen here, just a few of the images of some things that have been going on. All right, let me just, give me a second. Now I got to go through my whole routine here. There we go. I'll see the screen here. Okay, just some of the, can you see my screen, Craig?
Yes.
All right, so just some of the things that are, this is very rough. It's not a very polished presentation, but just some pictures in general. This is just an example of one of the tents that is up. This is the tent up in the large high school courtyard. This is I should say middle and high school courtyard. It's off of our learning commons. And this is a good example of something that might be used for mask breaks. We'll be putting some furniture under this to use for classes. It's a good space that was put up by our facilities team recently, and our custodians working on it. We have signage galore. I'd like to say, there's a little Einstein there. I just kept that in there. I thought that was kind of cute. But this is some custom signage that is all over our buildings now, directing students how to keep social distance, where to enter. This is one at a stairwell in the middle school where we have kind of a one-way flow, waiting spots to show where people should stand 6 feet apart, waiting for whatever it might be, the line in the cafeteria, the restroom. There's all kinds of markings to remind people to wear masks, which of course they'll be doing. It really looks very organized, and it is. Our rooms are all set. This is a particular room that shows the kind of the way things are broken up. This is a guidance room in the middle high school, but you can see the chairs are set apart 6 feet, and it's very socially distanced, safe. And I just love the "Be the Change" sign, because certainly a lot of change going on and a lot of change required at this time. Now the tent, This is specifically designed for some music. It's right outside of our auditorium, or I should say auditorium, but also where our music classes are. This is right at the middle school entrance. These are some large tents off of the Osgood, back of Osgood that will be used. Can be wonderful spaces for our kids. You know, and there's more. We're going to do some enclosure of the, we're looking to do in the next couple of days of the outdoor classroom. You know, when you think of some silver linings from all this, it's getting the kids out. It's going to be nice to be outside. You gain a lot from that. There's a good deal of research that shows the importance of getting kids out every day to do something. And I'm very excited about that opportunity, kind of a silver lining in a difficult time. Again, some more signage. This is an example of a medical waiting room. Now, we had some questions about what that would look like, and I have totally in my brain now adopted the term medical waiting room away from the isolation room, which as I was calling it. It sounded just terrible, but this is not a terrible space. It's a space that would be, you know, we'll be able to open windows, lots of chance for a student to be able to, you know, be safe if we do have a situation where they might be exhibiting a symptom before they're picked up. And again, I did send out all the protocols that are associated with that. Thank you to our nurses. I'll get into that in a minute, but anyway, this is just an example of the signage before it went up. You can see how many. This is just for, you know, for one of our buildings, but there's a significant amount of signage. And one of the things I'm also very proud of is our bus drivers this week went around, and with the cooperation of the town on public property, of course, did mark off on the bus stops where kids should be standing. I think that's really forward thinking, and I'm really proud of our town for allowing us to do that, because, you know, school really starts at the bus stop too, you know, so that's an important thing to remember, and we're really attending to that. Again, these are examples of some markings that are down. So you can see this is Osgood, I believe, moving one way and the other. Tents at Osgood. And then I just ended, this is just a very, very short sampling of some of the things. You know, those special touches that we have in our schools where our teachers are reminding the kids that we're going to be there for them. And that's what they're going to feel when they get back here. They're going to feel they have that first week, and they're going to really see a staff that's incredibly committed to them, to making them feel welcomed, and that, you know, they're going to get the sense we got this. We have this together, and we'll work through anything that comes our way. But beyond, you know, everything that we have setting down for safety's sake is that the teachers have those great relationships with our kids. It's the most important relationship in the building. And I was so, it was nice to see this kind of out there, and there's signs all over the place that sort of reflect this and show it. So anyway, just wanted to start with that. I thought it'd be just a nice kind of preview of some of the things that I'll be explaining more and depicting more in the next couple of days. We're in the process now of communicating. So if it feels like we're over communicating in the next few days, I want to apologize ahead of time, but I have instructed the building principals to make sure that they get out the pertinent information to families in the next couple of days about what our schedule will really look like. You know, obviously I sent out the skeleton of it, but and you've had the roadmap. But really, what is it going to look like in the first few days? What's our remote learning going to look like in the first few days? Just keep in mind the re-entry plan really focused on getting the kids back into school and what it would look like to do a gradual phasing in for them. But it in no way wanted to imply that there wasn't going to be learning happening in the first week, and there'll be some remote learning. It'll be lighter because we're getting them oriented in those first 4 days, but there will be remote assignments that will be happening that will really tie into that first week of induction going on in the schools, and as we roll into it. So that's just a little preview of some of the things that have been happening. Sue has worked with some protocols with our custodial staff. Sue Owen, our Director of Finance and Operations, thank you for doing that. We have cleaning protocols that are going to be outside of every door, and teachers and kids, for that matter, can come in and they can see what was done in the classroom. There's a whole list of things that they do to clean, after school ends each day. So they'll know that was done. And of course, outside the restrooms, it will look kind of like a restaurant in that respect. I kid, maybe not a fancy restaurant, but you'll see the actual date and timestamp of when everything was cleaned and what actually happened to do that cleaning. And then, of course, we have our deeper cleaning, which will involve our electro spray devices and a deeper, basically, iteration of what we're doing every night on that Wednesday. So that was set by Sue and her team. We went over, I'm sure I didn't get to touch base with her today. We were like moving in the night, so, just pass each other flying around, but she did some training, I know, with our bus drivers and also with our cafeteria workers, our food service workers. And we have safe protocols set for how the kids are going to get lunch. All of our seats are numbered. And so we'll be able to track exactly where folks are sitting. Our middle school will have assigned lunch seats. We'll get into that as we go if there are questions. Our elementary school will certainly have that. Our high school is going to utilize our QR codes, so we know exactly where they are. And remember, everything is socially distanced and safe. But we'll know from a contact tracing standpoint where those students were, and we'll be able to handle them that way. So everything's falling into place really nicely. Buildings are looking very good. And we're getting very close. So I will absolutely be ready as the kids come in on Tuesday and every single way. Any questions from the committee on just our preparations before I get into, I want to talk about HVAC today and the outside assessment that was done. I know that's on people's minds, of course. Ashley.
Thank you very much. I know you all are working very hard. I was wondering if there is a determined schedule for when building principals are reaching out to parents. I know I received an email from Deer Hill, but I don't know if middle and high school information has gone out, has it?
Yeah, it's scheduled to go out in the next day.
Okay.
So it would be, Thursday, and I don't know. I mean, I have to check in with what I saw what they were sending out. I don't know actually if they've been sent out, but everything they're sending is incredibly informative and substantive. So I don't know, Dr. Scollins, do you know if they've sent them out yet? I know they were.
Yeah, they were still working on them. I think they were kind of hashing some stuff out today because they want to make sure that some of the things they have are aligned between the middle and the high school. But I would anticipate them being out, I don't think they were going out today, but tomorrow or Friday for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the idea, to make sure people know exactly what's happening in the building. So it's that.
And I was wondering if it would be possible, I don't know. So I obviously saw the Deer Hill information because I have a third grader, but is it possible for us to be able to access the information for all the schools, or is that meant to be covered through your update? I don't want to create more work for anyone or ask for something that's inappropriate, but I just was wondering.
No, it is possible. Really, they should be putting them up on their websites. And I will be sending out a communication and newsletter. And then I was, usually my newsletters come out on Friday. I was hoping to get it out a little earlier, but it's been fairly much a sprint around here of recent days. But I will, I'm compiling all of that and we'll be able to get it out in my newsletter. That's the idea. So, you should see that in the next few days as well, a couple of days.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, so I'll talk a little bit. It's really going well. The training is going well. Dr. Collins will have a little chance to talk about that, and the preparations are certainly coming together. I have to thank Glenn Pratt and the town for the work they've done. They delivered a truckload of PPE, personal protective equipment, which has just become part of our vernacular now. But we have kits ready for every single teacher. which include, wipes and hand sanitizer and extra masks, and we'll have masks available in the offices. We'll have masks available in the entrances. There's hand sanitizer prepared everywhere. So we are in a good spot with that. So I'm going to share a brief. Just bear with me for 1 second. Okay. Sorry about this. It's very tricky to share things once in a while. There we go. Okay. So we did have a outside company named Bala come in and work on our HVAC and give a thorough analysis of our HVAC. And they're also done some airflow testing, which we're awaiting. But what they basically covered on our HVAC is they covered what we have for HVAC. They gave us some recommendations about how we might be able to upgrade some of our HVAC systems. And then I came up with, working with facilities, an action plan that we will be able to put into place to make some upgrades. I think that what's important to realize about HVAC is that there's a lot of new information that's come out that really hasn't been totally vetted yet regarding, you'll hear me talk about UVC irradiation, and the other one is, what is it called?
Bipolar.
Yeah, it's called UVC irradiation and bipolar ionization, which are two ways to filter air and to kill any viral particles. There's a lot unknown about this, and actually ASHRAE, ASHRAE, which is the industry standard in HVAC group. The Boston Charter is actually meeting tonight to talk about UVC irradiation and the bipolar ionization, and to decide what is viable in that for HVAC systems. So you'll see that that's recommended in some of these, that we could actually in our ductwork put in the UVC irradiation, which is essentially the blue light that you've seen probably that cleans things. It's a similar system. And then, but we've put that in as kind of a in the middle, not a short-term thing, because we need more information about it, but it's something that we might be able to do fairly soon if affordable, and if something that we can put in place and viable for our systems. But I want to go through what they found out in terms of the HVAC at each building, and then talk a little bit about what our plan is to make sure that we put in some needed improvements, and then some things that we can do to make our systems even better. So this is from Bala. I basically took right from their report. I will be putting the reports. I have shared with the reports with the school committee, which just came in late last week. I will be taking those reports and putting them on the website for everyone to see. So the whole community will be able to see the reports and this sort of summary / action plan, which I'm going to go over right now. So that'll be on there by tomorrow for sure, if not tonight, before, depending on when the school committee meeting ends, tonight. So what we have for HVAC at Joseph Osgood is that all classrooms are served by ducted recirculating fan coil units, basically that use hot water heating. There's finned tube hot water radiation lines that goes all the way around the classroom for use during heating sessions, and the outside air is ducted via exterior louvers. And then each classroom at Osgood is outfitted with an exhaust register to extract the air from the classroom and expel it from the building. There are wall-mounted cabinet unit heaters that recirculate air in the corridors, really just for heating purposes. The cafeteria is served by a dedicated roof-mounted air conditioning unit that provides ducted airflow to the space. There's a 2-story perimeter windows. They're provided with hot water, fin tube radiation to supplement the rooftop unit heating system during the heating season. And there's a separate exhaust fan which extracts air from the server area within the cafeteria and rejects this air to the outdoors. The gymnasium HVAC is very similar to the cafeteria, and the library is provided with a dedicated roof-mounted unit similar to the cafeteria and gymnasium. You'll hear a lot about MERV filters, and I've learned a lot about MERV filters. The standard seems to be MERV 8s. We have MERV 8s. It says MERV 7 here, but I've been told by our facilities that all of our filters are MERV 8s. They're suggesting that we move, if possible, to what's called a MERV 13. There's some issues with that, and that what I've learned in talking to experts is that if you put a MERV 13 filter in a MERV 8 system, the thickness of it can overheat it. So it's not as easy as just changing out the filter. There's some research we have to do in order to upgrade to the highest standard, which is a MERV 13. I think there's a MERV 16, but we have MERV 8s in all of our buildings simply because of the age of the buildings. Some of the recommendations for Osgood is that we want to increase filtration. Again, they talked about the bipolar ionization, which is basically charging the particles so that they kill they kill any virus that's happening. They're usually done, I think, this metal like finger-like structures that kind of stop and they purify the air. Increase the outside air percentage to the classroom. So in every classroom, there's fresh air coming in. And what they're recommending is that we increase the outside air percentage. Talk about that a little bit in our short-term plan. Typically, there's 15% outside air coming in and out, and we can increase that, of course, by opening it up more. The warmer the weather, or the more temperate the weather, the higher our ability is to open that up to get more air in. And as we get into the colder weather, we're still going to keep it open more than we typically would, but we want to allow for our heating to work as well. So the corridor lobby spaces in our buildings do not have an established ventilation system. They're actually tied into the entire building, which is using the actual classrooms to exhaust air in and out. So that's something that, in a longer term or even a medium term sense, we can try to help. But, it is important to know that we do have some exhaust happening within our hallways. There's air moving, but yet we do not have a dedicated ventilation system in our corridors. And that is something that was noted in the report. Our rooftop units serving the gymnasium, the cafeteria, the library, administrative offices are recommended to apply the strategies for enhanced ventilation. And they talk about UVC radiation with the rooftop unit, which would be a fairly expensive enterprise. But there are some things we can do with that, and bipolar ionization to help if we choose to really go to that level. And those are really the strategies that are recommended for Osgood. What we have for HVAC in Deer Hill is a little different. Its typical classrooms are served by unit ventilators, which utilize exterior louvers to bring in fresh outside air to the classroom. Just like Osgood, they're provided with the radiation that spans the exterior walls. All classrooms utilize operable windows, as does Osgood. Right now, we're in the process of repairing them so that they open more easily, but all of the windows do open. The unit ventilators utilize 1 inch thick, and it's actually MERV 8 filtration. Each classroom is provided with an exhaust register. It's located near the floor to extract the air from the classroom and reject it out to the roof. Typical classrooms have been retrofit to utilize some window AC units, which do not have ventilation control. There are some atypical classrooms, such as our computer lab, which utilizes ceiling-mounted ducted fan coils and hot water heating. And this explains how it's ventilated directly ducted to the DX units from the roof. Again, it's MERV 8. Administrative office utilize their own HVAC unit. The cafeteria is served by a dedicated roof-mounted heating and ventilation unit that provides ducted airflow to the space. Like Osgood, they have a separate exhaust fan extracting air from the servery and kitchen area with the cafeteria and rejecting it to the outdoors. The gymnasium and or auditorium HVAC system is composed of 2 roof-mounted HVAC units, which provide ducted, heated, and filtered airflow to the space. And then they have a dedicated means of exhaust air via exhaust fans to extract air from the space and reject the air to the outdoors. The unit utilizes, it's actually MERV 8 filters, which I just learned. The library is provided with a dedicated roof-mounted unit, similar to the cafeteria, except this unit has air conditioning equipped. And we know that our library has air conditioning at Deer Hill. So some of the strategies that are recommended are very similar to Osgood. That the unit ventilators are recommended to apply the strategies that we had just talked about. Classroom exhaust fans are recommended to run for extended hours. So we right now run them from, I think it's 7 in the morning till 5 in the evening. You'll see we're going to run them for much longer. In some cases, based on what facilities has, we may run them 24/7 if needed, but certainly from 5 in the morning till 12 midnight to continue that movement and exhaust of air. Like Osgood, there isn't a dedicated ventilation system in the hallway. One of the things they recommend in both buildings is an energy recovery ventilator unit, which is called an ERV, which has its own system built in. It actually conditions the air from the outside and brings it back in. That's what you'll see in most new buildings, when new schools are built now, these ERV ventilator systems are put in. They're maybe not as practical for us, but they would certainly help move the air in the spaces that they were dedicated to. Heating and ventilation units and exhaust fans serving the cafeteria and gymnasium are recommended. Same thing, to apply the strategies of enhanced ventilation, opening up for running it for longer. I mentioned the bipolar ionization, some cleaning, some flushing out, recalibrating the air control dampers, all things we can do. And additionally, all exhaust fans are recommended to utilize ventilation and pre-post occupancy flush out control strategies. This has all been delivered to our facilities team who will be working on this. Air moving units serving the administrative spaces are recommended to employ measured, outlined, and mixed and recirculating systems. So just to give you an idea of what we have there and what are recommended in our elementaries. In terms of the middle and high school, obviously a bigger building, but you can see that the typical classrooms are served by the same type of unit ventilators in the particular rooms, with the exhaust register on the floor, again extracting the air from the classroom and rejecting it up outside to the roof. Atypical classrooms have some ceiling mounted ducted unit ventilators, which provide conditioned and filtered air in the space. Our language lab has a ductless split system air conditioning unit, provides some air conditioning because of the high heat gain associated with computers, and they have their own unit ventilator. We do have in our corridors, we have the wall and ceiling mounted cabinet unit heaters, which recirculate the air for the heating purposes, not dedicated to actually move the air, just not how our systems were designed. Our systems were designed to actually exhaust through the classrooms. Administrative office spaces in the middle school are serviced by a dedicated roof-mounted air conditioning unit that provides ductless airflow to the space. The rooftop unit is again MERV 8. Our nurse's office at the middle school, we're going to do some work on, but it is serviced by a single unit ventilator and a ceiling mounted exhaust grill. And you can see where our teacher's room have some move and cool unit air conditioning systems. Again, they have a single exhaust grill. You can see the heating sources. So they went through everything. The wood shop utilizes propeller units for heat only. The space is a non-working heat and ventilation unit, We're going to upgrade that by, well, hopefully help with the exhaust in that room by upgrading our dust collection units. We'll get into that in a minute. Gymnasium HVAC system is comprised of natural gas fired rooftop units, which provide ducted heat and filtered airflow to the space. And they have a means of exhausting air as well. That's MERV 8 filtration. The middle and high school locker rooms are also equipped with exhaust fans, and they heat and filtered outside air. The auditorium has its own roof-mounted air conditioning unit that provides ducted airflow to the space. The rooftop unit is fitted, it says MERV 7. Maybe it's MERV 7 in this case, but I thought it was MERV 8. The cafeteria is served by a dedicated roof-mounted HVAC unit. And the library also has its own rooftop unit. Some of the recommendations, rooms being served by the unit ventilators are recommended to apply the same strategies. The corridor lobby spaces, we could look into that energy recovery ventilator system if we so see fit to do so. Heating and ventilation units and exhaust fans serving the cafeteria are recommended to apply those strategies just as the other two buildings were. And then same thing with the rooftops units for the library, the auditorium, and the administrative areas. You know, if UVC or bipolar ionization would help mitigate any viral situation that might come in if we wanted to go to that extent. The wood shop, it needs to be repaired and replaced, the heating and ventilation unit, no question about that, but we are going to try to help with that with further exhaust in the system. So to get to some of what our near-term and long-term actions are, for near-term actions, first of all, we're going to ensure that all of our, well, I should state, we always have the option of turning off the HVAC system and just exhausting. We could do that. You know, obviously we'd have air coming in through windows. It could get very cold because when you do that, you're not conditioning with heating. But we have that option should we want to do it. But these are some of the actions that we can take. We can ensure that our windows and interior classroom doors are open to increase the airflow. This is recommended in all buildings. We're certainly going to do that. Increase the frequency all classroom units are cleaned and serviced. We're going to extend the hours for our HVAC functioning. I mentioned that, you know, what we're going to be doing with that. We're going to increase the frequency all classroom units are cleaned and serviced. They're going to do that now several times a year as opposed to maybe twice or 3 times a year. I mentioned the extending for the HVAC functioning. Increase our outside air percentages. We have, we can go to up to 100% if we want to, but 30% is a level that we feel will be productive as the weather gets colder. If we need to utilize box fans to exhaust air in and out of the classrooms through the windows, we can do that when appropriate and when possible. We're going to service our exhaust fans more regularly, service our unit ventilators more regularly to make sure the damper operations and linkages that offer outside air are functioning properly. We're going to attend to our outside air coils at the Osgood and Deer Hill to make sure that the filtration and tempering are working appropriately. We're going to enhance the dust collection in Cohasset High School woodshop by repairing the dust collection unit. I moved up, and not in this version, I have a different version in front of me, so I apologize for that, but there are only a couple of corrections made. But we're going to investigate the feasibility of installing, I should say, the efficacy of installing either UVC irradiation or bipolar ionization where ductwork allows as a more kind of middle term measure to see what we can do with that to try to, you know, based on the research that's happening and based on the feasibility of installing these things into our existing units and duct space. That'll be kind of a middle term action. But our long-term actions would be to really investigate the feasibility of installing MERV 13 filters. I should say the information I'm getting is that it might not be possible based on our own HVAC system. And then I mentioned those ERV energy recovery ventilators to help airflow in our common spaces and in our hallways. So overall, that's kind of a quick sort of overview of what we have in place right now, what we are recommended to do, and what are some measures that we're really looking to potentially do. So I don't know, the committee had any questions or thoughts, or if there are questions out there regarding any of this. We are getting some more airflow, which will help us with like where we place box fans and all that, and that'll be in, I'm hoping tomorrow.
This is all a very recent development, Dr. Sullivan. So I imagine that that the recommendations from the report are being evaluated and explored by facilities, and the viability, costs, time frame of installation, things of that nature, and we'll be getting updates as information develops from that entity, or from that department.
Yeah, absolutely. I already have some thoughts on what some of these things would roughly cost, and I don't feel real comfortable sharing it publicly because of the rough estimates. But yes, we're absolutely on that and looking at everything. You know, and some of these are really long-term items that would bring us up to the ultimate we could have in filtration that would cost a significant amount of money for the, you know, if we did want to employ them. And they take a long time to do as well.
And obviously, there's the consideration that we also reconstituted the new facilities committee in exploration of whether new or revitalized facilities would be necessary. So we'd have to consider the economics involved in that as well, correct?
Yeah, for instance, like some of those machines could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's a definite consideration, you know, as we're looking at, you know, whether we want to do that or what we want to do as a long-term measure.
Okay, well, thank you for that initial presentation. If you could just provide us updates as the process moves forward, we'd greatly appreciate that. Any members of the school committee have any questions relating specifically to the HVAC sort of overview that Dr. Sullivan just gave? Okay, oh, Mrs. Marr.
Hi, thank you, Mr. McClellan. Thank you for the overview, Dr. Sullivan. I too learned a lot about HVAC units. So you did answer one of my questions. You said presently we're at about 15% of our outside air coming in, and the goal is to get to about 30.
Well, we can do more. So in the shoulder season, we're looking to open that up more. We can open up to 100% if we want to. But again, our heaters, when our heaters kick on, in order for them to have any effect, they can't be competing too much with the outside air because of the cooling effect of it. So that's really what it comes down to. But I anticipate we'll be opening those up pretty widely in the good weather. But you know, it does get cold in November.
Right, because I looked on CDC quickly, and they had the same recommendation, but they didn't say to what. Like what is the best number to get to help mitigate, you know, this airborne virus? Yeah,
so what I've been, well, I mean, you want to get as much airflow as you can,
right.
But what I've been told is that it's about 30%, which is on the high level. We don't typically run it at that, but at 30% is where you start to have those heat battles to the heating system and the ability to open up the air. But like I said, when the weather is not an issue, we're going to open those things up.
And then just a quick question. In one of the recommendations in the short term, you said extend hours for HVAC. So the CDC recommended 2 hours before the opening of the building and 2 hours after. Is that kind of where your head is at?
No, we were going to do more than that. We were going to do we were looking at 5 a.m. till 12 a.m.
So it's only off for 5 hours, from midnight to 5 a.m.
That was what facilities was recommending to make sure we you know, had proper exhaust happening in the building.
Okay.
We could shorten it if we needed to, but I mean, I think that was the idea there was to be as thorough as possible with making sure we get the air in and out.
But again, this is exploratory. Nothing's been
right.
No, that's tremendously exploratory, and that was just our initial thought regarding the time frame.
Okay. That's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Marr. Anyone else?
Yes. First, yes, again, you guys are doing a great job there. And we so appreciate all the hard work from both the facilities and the management team. Just want to throw that out there. And to Craig's point earlier about the facilities, the long-term solution, I think it's imperative that we assign the 3 that we're going to recommend to the town moderator to get that committee out there. So if, I guess, how do we as a committee get our 3, and what is the qualifications to advance this, so in a later date we'll be able to adhere to all these recommendations?
Oh, I am with you on that, and that's we had actually placed on the agenda a little bit later in the meeting. We're going to be talking about that very point, and I want to fill our 3 slots immediately, like yesterday. So I'm with you.
Right.
So let's just get past the superintendent's report first, if we can. Anything else? Okay. So Dr. Sullivan, can you continue with the superintendent's report?
Sure. I'm just looking at my own agenda here. Pardon me. So yeah, so next up, I'd like to invite Dr. Scollins to talk a little bit about our annual mandated reporter and compliance training, which kind of coincidentally we had part of today. Correct, Dr. Scollins? So I'll let you unmute and talk about the what we had for our compulsory trainings.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Sullivan. So every year we need to have some annual training that's mandated by the state. I sent you a list of those items. It really is related to civil rights. We go over the Office of Civil Rights and Complaints, 504, what are our overviews of the laws and the regulations at the state and federal level, safe schools, the Massachusetts anti-bullying law, confidentiality for student information, student records, harassment in the workplace, student discipline, the McKinney-Vento, which is a homeless act for that provides resources, what our policy is for physical restraint as it is related to the law, the right to know law, mandated reporting around child abuse and neglect, faculty handbook, and then our school committee policies. That's part of it. And I'll come back to the mandated reporting piece because we had additional training on that. We have certain things that we specifically need to share and make sure that everybody understands that they are mandated reporters as educators. But we go a little bit above just the standard of this is what the expectations are, this is the process, this is what you do. We actually bring in some training. It's, I believe the 3rd year. I know we did it last year and this year, and I believe we did it the year prior to my arrival here in Cohasset. But then we also look at special education law. So we need to look at those from the state and federal level. And we, look at IEPs for accommodations and modifications and, all those things related to FAPE. Oops, sorry, my light keeps going off. It's on a timer. I'm here too late. Wait a minute. There we go. And then, what it looks like in the least restricted environment. So it's a standard process we gave every staff member, and that includes bus drivers, custodians, cafeteria workers, ESPs, administrators, teachers, you name it. Anybody who has anything to do with the school functioning, they have to do this training, and they have till September 21st. I gave them a month to get it done and sign off on it. And then we're mandated to keep that information of all those people that took it. And we have to track those down that didn't to make sure they do. But they're really pretty good about getting it done. We give them enough time. But today we had the Norfolk County DA come in, and well, it was a Zoom. And they came in and they went over a more in-depth presentation on what is mandated reporting, what are the expectations, what's the Department of Children and Family Services, what things should they be looking for in students. As you can imagine, there is a plethora of of things you might see in a student, especially now as students come back. Unfortunately, the rates of child abuse and some other things have escalated during COVID. And so, we will have children coming back that we need to really watch for some signs around what may be happening for them. So they did a really great job today around what all those protocol, all the things that we need to remember. So it just kind of really supports the training that we already did with them. But I really like that they get this. I actually even got a couple of emails from people saying, thank you so much for this training. A little hard to hear because some of the stats they give us are a little intense, but I think it's really important for us to understand what our role is and why it is so important that we understand that we are mandated reporters, and that if we see abuse or suspect abuse and neglect, that we just make the call. It doesn't hurt to file. It's important to make sure that kids are safe. So, so that was what we did today. One of the things we did today. All right. Any questions about the mandated reporting or the mandatory yearly annual training that we do? And that's on the website too. If anyone wants to look at it, it's a PowerPoint. You can see it. It's on the website.
Thank you, Dr. Scollins. Dr. Sullivan, before you continue, there was a question related to the reentry plan that I neglected to answer, or excuse me, pose from the community earlier, and I apologize for doing that. It's posed by Leontina Marcatulli of 18 Spring Street. She asked, will the high school have assigned seats at lunch? And if so, will they determine the grouping? How will they determine the grouping? Excuse me. For many of the students, lunchtime may be the only time they can see any friends they don't share classes with.
Yeah, well, we get that, and they will not have assigned seats at the high school. What we're actually going to institute is QRV codes. So they're going to be scanned. There's a system in case they don't have a device. Remember, high school students are allowed to use their smartphones in the building. So if they do have a smartphone, they can scan the QR code. What do they call it? Yeah, I think I just did like the home shopping network code, but it's just the QR code where they scan it, and it will populate to a Google Doc. Because remember, the importance is that we know where people were. They're going to be socially distanced anyway. They're going to be 6 feet apart. I did a little experiment with Principal Mills. I walked down there and we kind of sat next to each other to see if we could have a conversation. He sat in different places. They're going to be fine, everybody. Okay? They're going to be fine. They're going to have appropriate conversations. There's going to be opportunities when it's good weather for them to go outside and eat at the middle and the high school. It's going to be a really good situation for them. But at the high school, we are, because the kids are a little older, we're using those codes we'll know exactly where they are. If they don't have a smartphone, they're going to have to tell someone on staff who will write down what seat they sat in. All of our seats are numbered, so we'll know that, and we'll be able to track from that perspective. That's really what we're doing, and that's why we want to have that. But we're very, very clued into the fact that it's a social time, and I assure you they're resilient, and they'll find a way to socialize. I guarantee that, and it will be I think it's going to be, not ideal. Obviously, nothing is ideal here, but totally a socially, a moment when they can have some time to talk to people. No question.
Would you like to go into attendance, Dr. Sullivan?
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you, Dr. Collins.
Okay. So just a quick overview of what attendance will look like this year. We have obviously students that will be in the buildings, and we have students that will be working remotely. If you're at the elementary level, daily attendance will be taken in the morning, just as it was when you were in person. And in those days when you are in the remote learning, whoever you are connecting with for morning meeting, they will take daily attendance. And that's how we'll, kind of keep track of that. We need to submit our daily attendance to the state. So we need to have some sort of system. So we've built that into our student learning management system, Aspen. So everybody knows how to kind of check the boxes. We've got a lot of codes in there. And then for the middle and high school, it's a little bit different. Again, there will be a daily attendance. And that if you're in person, it's just like it always was. And if you are remote, it's the same. Your first period class is where you will have your daily attendance. And those students that have like a study or have some VHS, don't worry about that. That's going to be managed at the building level, but they will know who they check in with for their daily attendance. And then there will be period attendance for both the middle and high school. They do that anyway, especially at the middle and high school. One, because they want to make sure kids are in class, and then the high school really tracks it because it goes toward their hours. So that will happen whether it's remote or it's in person. That will the teachers will take care of that, and then we'll have that information. And so that's the quick overview. So it's kind of like it's always been. It's just that when it's remote, you'll be checking in with the person in the morning that you'll be having your morning meeting with, or your first period class. Any questions about that?
2 questions. One is, I think I might have missed something about the middle high school attendance. I just am trying to take notes as I usually do. So can you just review that? Sorry, very quickly again.
I probably went too fast. So middle and high school, daily attendance. If you're in person, it's your first class like it always was. And if you are remote, it's your first class of the day. That's where attendance will be taken.
So every period when they're in person, or just first period?
No, well, daily attendance. So there's 2 different attendances happening. The daily attendance is what we have to report to the state. We don't report period attendance. That's really just for our records.
Got it. Okay. That's where I was confused. Thank you.
Sorry.
My second question is about TECA attendance.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Tom, do you mind reviewing how that's happening?
So I'm not really sure. I thought I was, and I've just received an email. There's a video I have to watch. I couldn't do it because I was at a meeting. I was actually at the training that I was talking about. So I actually have to read it. I mean, I have to watch it. So my understanding was that TECA was taking attendance, but I'm not actually sure that's true.
Right. They directed the students / parents who were sitting next to the students that their home district was responsible for attendance.
Yes, I didn't know.
I just wanted to make sure that that was on our radar. Okay.
Yeah, it actually became my radar about 6:15.
Okay. Well.
So thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Dr. Sullivan doesn't even know because I haven't had a chance to talk to him about it.
No, I don't. But that's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
We'll get through it.
Here's the thing. I feel like this is as good a time as any to say that I really do believe this is all very uncharted territory. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's all work together to get through the kinks and the bumps in the road at the beginning, and we'll all be okay. Yeah.
It's going to be fine. I will tell you that all of the trainings, we had so many different trainings, and I'm not scheduled to talk to you about all of them, but because you said that, Ashley, it came up over and over again. We did work around trauma. We did work around cultural competency. We did work around racism. We worked with licensed social workers and all sorts of people. And the biggest thing they said is we are going to have bumps in the roads. Our kids are resilient. We're resilient, but take a breath.
Yeah.
So every time something comes up, I kept hearing about it. Take 3 big breaths, calm your brain down, and we'll problem solve it. And we have been doing that all along, and everybody's been so cooperative and so collaborative, and we'll continue to do that. So we'll get through. So thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
And Dr. Collins, we're going to be taking, did you mention virtual attendance too?
I did. That was the remote. Yes.
Remote attendance. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Dr. Scollins, for that. I just do have a question from the community relating back to the reentry plan update. Dr. Sullivan, Dr. Scollins. So I'm just going to read that now. And I actually, before I do, I just want to, this is my fault for not, I typically say this at the beginning of the meeting along with my public comment, procedural comment. If you're going to make a comment or ask a question, please do. But just as you would if you're in person, please state your full name and your address. This is not because we really want to know where you live. It's because we're trying to create a record. So just please do that as you are asking questions. It's just difficult in this virtual format. And we just need to make sure we're creating the best record we can. So this question is from an individual identified as Sarah. She asked, for remote learning, what exactly is the learning plan for the high school students? Will they be interacting with their teachers in any form? If given assignments when remote, how will their questions be answered? If the teacher has only office hours, how would, I think it means, it's meant to say, how would they handle volume? Attendance does not count. That's not learning.
No, and we didn't mean to
Yeah.
we didn't mean to insinuate that that's all they'd be doing. We're looking for them to do a meaningful interaction with the kids who are virtual. So, you know, obviously they're teaching the kids in front of them. We want them focusing on that, but we also want them to have a meaningful interaction with the kids who are at home. They'll take attendance. They'd be able to do a mini lesson. They'd be able to have some Q&A. They'd be able to do a myriad of things at the beginning of the class. That's what we're looking for. And then I know there'll be some teachers that will take that further, but we want that connection. Remember that the learning is a little different remotely than it is in person. And we need to attend to some of the independent nature of some of that learning as well. But we feel that connectivity is essential. And so you can expect that there'll be some meaningful interactions between the secondary level teachers and their students who are virtual as they're working with their in-person students.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Moving on, in the superintendent report, I think the next item is the enrollment quarterly update, Dr. Sullivan.
Yes, absolutely. And I just want to say you know, the right now the plan is moving along. We are, you know, any misconception about that, I think is a misconception. We're in a good spot to kind of have a platform for all the things in the reentry plan to be put into place. So I want to make sure everyone knows that.
And we
Yeah.
just did a lot of training too, Dr. Sull, if you don't mind me saying. So we have partnered with EdTech. That's what you're talking about, right? They're continuing to talk about, Dr. Sullivan, the remote learning.
Yep.
Yeah. So we've coordinated with EdTech teacher, and we've had several trainings for all our staff related to what does it look like in Google Classroom, what does remote learning look like, and then how do you design engaging lessons for those students. So we had lots of great feedback from teachers, and it really gave them a system and a process to understand how do we engage our students, because that's one of the most important things is that engagement piece, and how do you do that in a virtual world. So that was just to support what you were saying, Dr. Sullivan.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so before you get into the enrollment update, now there's additional questions that again relate to this reentry and sort of remote learning issue, and I want to address them as they're coming in. The first, it looks like Jessica DiLorenzo attempted to ask a question. Oh, there she is. She's just chimed in. Jessica DiLorenzo of 132 Chief Justice Cushing Highway. She asks, have you assigned Cohasset High School staff as remote versus in-person learning teachers? Meaning, are there teachers going to be assigned on home learning days for each subject if the teachers will have other students in person and they are not live streaming?
So I think the question is, are there separate teachers for remote and separate teachers for in-person? The answer is no. We have our teachers doing both. If there are any particular accommodations that need to happen for staff to do anything individual, and there won't be a lot of those, but those will be communicated appropriately to those to those students who will be having those staff members. But no, we do not have separated remote learning from remote learning staff and then in-person staff. Our staff are doing both. Is that an appropriate answer, you think, Dr. Scollins? Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, that's right.
Okay, thank you. The next is from Sarah McSweeney of 14 Summer Street. I understand the beginning of the class, but I think she asked this question when we were talking about what you described as the meaningful interaction, Dr. Sullivan. So yeah. She says, I understand the beginning of the class, but we need a mechanism to have support/questions answered after the lesson plan/assignment. There are a number of platforms to facilitate interaction, which I'm happy to share offline. We need more specifics about that during class time. It feels a bit unstructured.
Okay. We're always looking for more information. You know, I think that Dr. Scollins can talk to the training we've had, and just so everyone knows, the training we've had is by ed tech teacher. They're probably the most sought after group to help with any type of remote learning right now, and we have them. So we're working through all of that about, you know, what are the best platforms to use when, you know, you're teaching totally remotely. What's the best platform to use when you might be working with your class in person and you're arranging for asynchronous assignments for your students in remote? What's the best way to potentially combine the two? All of those things are being discussed, and platforms are being discussed, ways to film yourself and to put it on the screen as you're showing a slideshow in the background. All of that in interactive models. Anything you want to add, Dr. Scollins? But I want to say to Ms. McSweeney, is that right? That we'd love to see it. We're all a team, and we're one learning, growing community. So, and this community has a lot of knowledge. So please share with Dr. Scollins and me anything you have. We're appreciative of that and appreciative of your thoughts. Dr. Scollins, my little sounds, would you mind, I'm having a little technical issues. Do you think you could find, and I'll be able to let you share your screen. Could you share the enrollment update in a few minutes?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I'll just have you share on your screen. I'm just struggling to answer questions and get it going.
I got you.
Speaking of technology, as you're trying to do two things at once.
I think you really need like 4 screens and a bunch of other stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Next is Mr. Christopher Allen of 21 Pleasant Street. He asks, please advise what is required of the teachers, though, as it relates to the 3 days every week that the students are at home. Community members have real concerns that we have little to no info on this. So again, I think all these questions, okay, are targeting the fact that the community lacks specifics on what the remote learning is going to look like. And I share in this anxiety, as you are aware. And I think that, I mean, from what I've surmised from what I have gathered, and my understanding is that, you know, there are different kids, different teachers, and different subjects in different schools, in different developmental stages. And I believe that a large portion of the professional development has been dedicated to remote learning techniques, and that's what the teachers have been engaged in this time that we've had the delayed opening, and that's what it was primarily, I think, intended for. But I think that the parents are looking for is what, you know, and I understand it, that they're looking for a direct and detailed answer as to what can they expect their children's day to look like when they're at home and not in front of a teacher. And I understand why they have that anxiety, because I have anxiety about that, given what we've come to call pandemic learning from the spring. So, but I like I said, I have, my understanding is that it's sort of still developing from the professional development, but also it really varies depending on what you're talking about.
Yeah, so remember in the roadmap, there are sample schedules. I know you want deeper than that, but you know, I guess you're going to get at the elementary level, you're going to get morning meetings every morning. You're going to get conclusion activities in the afternoon. You're going to get all kinds of asynchronous activities happening throughout the day. Dr. Scollins, you want to add anything? I mean, at the middle and high school, you're going to get synchronous learning, where the students are going to be tapping into each class, every single class, to get the things I just talked about. And then they're going to have time to go and do independent work and potentially tap back into a class. So the schedules are the schedules. It's a full day at both the elementary and at the middle and high school. Middle and high school are following period by period, if you're remote, your class. And you're going to tap in every single period. So when you have your schedule, that's your schedule. At the elementary and at the elementary schools, you've seen from the roadmap that our remote days are structured a little differently. because we didn't believe in the synchronous model because of those learning needs of those early learners, and the fact that it's just impossible to really treat them as independent souls when they're just not there yet. So that is, I guess, the more explicit description, and I totally respect the question, the more explicit description of day-to-day is going to come, just as it always does. It comes from the individual building and your individual teacher. You know, your individual teacher is going to be able to describe exactly what's going to happen in those classrooms. We all have the same curriculum. We're following the same curriculum, but just as the daily activities and when they happen are set by the individual teacher, they're going to fill that framework that I just described in. So it's really not any different than in regular school, where when you come in, you have a curriculum you're going to be taught, and the teacher sets the schedule for when that's taught. It's just that you need to know that, unlike the spring, and I respect what you're saying, Jim McClellan and the person who's at Mr. Allen, we do have a more structured, longer, more synchronous, more developed remote learning plan for your students. And you're going to see that, certainly as we move into it deeply in the 28th, you're going to see all the things that we have set for the kids. You're going to see some very well thought out and very innovatively structured lessons using asynchronous filming of teachers doing lessons, where your son or daughter can literally go in there and watch the teacher deliver a lesson, and the teacher will say, now pause and do this, or pause and do that. You're going to see a lot more, you're going to see growth is what you're going to see, because that's what's happened. We're growing as educators and administrators on how to put this into place, and that's what you're going to see at home. And the trainings have really facilitated that. So I understand the frustration, but I want you to think about this right now as you would a regular year. You don't get a full syllabi necessarily at this time in the year from your elementary teachers or from any teacher. You know what they're going to be teaching from a curriculum standpoint, and you know the framework of it. Again, checking in every single period for some meaningful interaction with the teacher, taking attendance as we do that, and moving the day along, moving the learning along at the middle and high school. Elementary, you saw from the beginning that there's a flip in some of the specialists and the core teachers, and when they do morning meetings and when they are synchronous, but that's going to happen throughout the day. And the quality and level of asynchronous teaching is going to be so increased that you're going to feel very good about it when you get into it. But once again, I know exactly where you're coming from. So I just have a little faith it's going to happen. It's going to be much better.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Before we move on, I just wanted the record to reflect that committee member Lydia St. Ange was present as of 7:07 p.m. Welcome. The next question is from Declan Lee, 67 Ripley Road. He comments or asks, for Wednesdays when the school is closed for cleaning, are teachers teaching remote from home, or what is happening? Are students on their own doing homework, or is there connectivity with teachers?
No, it's full connectivity with teachers. They're running they're running synchronous and asynchronous lessons. So there's going to be, you're going to have a full day of learning. In terms of where the teachers will be, for a variety of reasons, a lot of teachers will be in the building, but we are allowing some teachers to teach from, or teachers to teach from home, I should say, as long as that connectivity happens throughout the day. Obviously there's some deep cleaning happening on those days, and that's the way we're approaching it right at this time.
I think maybe the question is driving at where the teachers are not having any children in front of them. Are they going to be synchronously instructing the children? Wherever they are.
No, the answer is yes. And at the elementary, Dr. Scollins, you can maybe talk a little bit about that, but the answer is yes to that.
Yeah, and they'll have synchronous time at the elementary level. They'll have, their morning meetings. They'll have their lesson pieces. There will be some asynchronous time too. They'll have time for lunch, that kind of stuff. And then the teachers will have some common planning time built into that day so that they can make sure that they're staying locked in line, because the days are a little bit different now around preps because of the hybrid model. We need to make sure they have a little bit of common planning time, but during that time, someone else will be working with the students, or they'll have an asynchronous lesson that they have to attend to. So
remember on the remote days,
learning.
At the elementary, on the remote days, some of the specialists are really leading those synchronous opportunities. Whereas on Wednesdays, we're going to have our core teachers really leading those synchronous opportunities. That's just the way we set it up, because we want our core teachers to really be able to attend to those elementary kids in person when they're in person. It's a really valuable thing for those elementary students. But we have, you're going to get synchronous opportunities. It's not going to be like a Zoom here or there. You're going to get real synchronous opportunities at every level, but certainly, as Dr. Scollin said, in an articulated way at the elementary.
And along with the lines of what Mrs. Caleri was saying earlier on, with regards to, I think, the overall process, everyone should remember that this is a fluid situation. It's evolving. And just as you all are now, you should feel very, very welcome to share any sort of challenges that you're seeing throughout this process with district leadership and the school committee, so that can be taken into consideration as we move through this process. No one has done this, okay? No one has done this. I understand that, the situation was thrust upon us mid-spring semester last year, and everyone was extremely, including myself, was extremely underwhelmed and concerned by the response at that point and the learning solution that was provided, but no one had any time to prepare for that. Now, practitioners have had time to prepare, so what will be delivered will be absolutely much better than what was delivered in the spring when no one had any ability to plan for this. But nevertheless, no one's ever done it before. So there will, if you think that this is going to be a flawless, seamless learning solution that could not possibly be improved upon when it is first rolled out, you are mismanaging your expectations. And that is not to say that you should expect that it's terrible. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that everyone should manage their expectations and work together in sharing input and important feedback with the district leadership and school committee as we go through this process, so that we can adjust and improve. And that's one of the reasons that we will be revisiting this very shortly after the children return to school on October, help me out, Dr. Sullivan, 28th, 26th.
Oh, you had it right. October 28th. October 28th is the day of looking at things.
Right. So just keep in mind that that's how we're moving forward here. It's going to be a fluid and evolving situation. So don't fret.
And Mr. McClellan, if you don't mind, one of the things that that I've been discussing with Dr. Sullivan, and I actually have a meeting tomorrow to talk with EdTech teacher, is to provide a workshop for parents so you know what it looks like. I just think that it's hard to explain. So I know what it looks like, and Dr. Sullivan knows what it looks like, but until you see it, I really didn't understand it either. Until I was in the workshops, and then I had kind of those aha moments like, oh, I have that. Oh, I understand. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, now we can do this. And the teachers are completely engrossed in what they're learning, and the things that they're sharing with me are pretty fantastic. So it is going to look different. I can't tell you, it's not going to look like it used to right now. It just isn't. But we've learned so much too that I think I think that there's some really neat things that are going to come out of this that are not even going to help. They're going to help us now, but they're actually going to help us as we move on as educators and leave this situation with COVID-19 and what we're going through. It's actually impacting our pedagogy around how do we engage with students, how do we get the biggest bang for our buck. Like when those kids are in front of us Like, we want to take full advantage of that in-person moment. So there are things that we can do in the remote virtual world that get kids ready. So when they are in front of us, we like get right in and get to the business of learning. They're going to be doing it all along, but I think we may actually have a more efficient way of teaching kids and a more engaging way that we're going to be teaching kids. So that was my spiel, but I am working with EdTech tomorrow. Actually, I have a meeting at 11 o'clock, and we're going to talk about what we could possibly offer. So look forward to that.
And one thing, a couple of other quick things, just, I promised that I'm going to start doing some Thursday meetings as the year goes on. Probably, I'm realizing that I'm a little booked out right now to do all that, but I do want to have some really virtual superintendent coffees where I listen to people's concerns and try to get that out and can continue the dialogue as well. And I should just, it's not easy to create, and Lydia knows this for sure, but to create these remote lessons robustly. And the teachers are working really hard to create a full lesson that would incorporate times when they are meeting in person. It is not easy. It's much more time consuming than just preparing a lesson that they have prepared in the past. It's a really new way of thinking and teaching and learning. And I just want to emphasize that I recognize the desire for that synchronous approach. And I respect that there's merit in that. But there's also an understanding that teaching remotely is not, and learning remotely is not exactly the same as learning in person. It's just not. Think about being in front of a screen for all that time. You have to have times when you're breaking it up. You're doing asynchronous work. You'll burn right out. You'll burn the kids right out. You can't do it that way. You have to have really robust, innovative, and engaging activities that are prepared both synchronously and asynchronously. That takes time, that takes effort, that takes professional development, and that's what we're working on. We're not, just flipping the switch and just opening it up is not the same, particularly for those younger kids, as it is, you might think it is. It just doesn't work that way. No good online learning works that way. We're trying to get to the point where we've given our teachers the tools to do it the best they can do, which is what they want to do. And it takes a lot of time. I'll get off my soapbox.
No, it was a good soapbox. I appreciate that, Dr. Sullivan. I think we've adequately addressed that point, and I do want to keep on maintaining the cadence here in the meeting. So I think that we've attempted to. We're in eager anticipation of this quarterly enrollment update here. We've tried to get to it a couple of times. So
yeah, it's really. May you share that? Are you able to share that, Dr. Collins?
I can. I want to make sure, because I want to make sure I'm pulling up the right thing.
Whatever it is, I'm going to go with it. I'm just kidding.
It's my list for the store. Here you go. Can you see
This is it.
See it?
I can see it, and more importantly, everyone can see it. So anyway, you can see our enrollments, as of, it's for the committee, so you can get a sense for where we are here, where our average class size is. Our numbers have increased for homeschooling. That is for sure. Usually we have, I think, are we about 30?
Yeah, I think we're just shy of 30, although I just got a couple more in today. So yeah, right around 30. We usually, it appears around 10, 13 students.
Yeah, and this is happening everywhere, and it's a product of the pandemic. We understand that. Yeah. But you can see our numbers here. Any questions from the committee on it? Nothing tremendously remarkable about it. Okay, you can stop the share there. Thank you. That was, I know it was eagerly anticipated. It wasn't very much, but yeah, that was the enrollment update. I've lost my agenda. What is next?
Both those surplus materials, the heat geometry books.
You want me to share that too? I have everything up on my screen. You want me to do that for you?
Oh, that'd be awesome. I'm having some kind of, something's jamming up on my screen. Yeah, that'd be lovely. Thank you.
I'm here to help. How's that?
Yeah, it's perfect. So as we've been cleaning and removing excess materials there, once in a while we come across some books that are not able to use, or that we have moved to another version of. But to be able to dispose of the books, and these are older books, we do need permission from the school committee. So maybe you could just scan down a little bit, Dr. Scollins. These are, please, these are geometry books. And of course, our math department head director at the middle and high school is John Fortin, and Brian Scott is the principal. These are copyright 1998. And they are not being used as of this time. So, we're asking for permission to be able to dispose of these properly. I actually have not made this request since I've been at Cohasset Public Schools. So I don't know, I hope I'm doing it properly. Ellen, maybe, I don't know if you have any, am I doing it properly?
Yes.
Okay, so with that, I guess I'd leave it to you, Chair McClellan, to decide if this is something we're able to get rid of. There are 84 of them.
Sure. Any members of the committee have any comments before I seek a motion? Mrs. Marr?
I would just say there's 4 sets of books. Instead of going through them one by one, we can just make a motion to approve the disposal of all of the surplus math textbooks for $800. The total
Perfect.
estimated value is $800. We don't have to go through them one by one.
Okay, yep.
Oh, yeah.
They're all very old. They're old.
Maybe they've thought of some more shapes since then.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess that's always the argument, right? Like, why are you getting rid of the ancient history books? I mean, but I get these, we do have other means of teaching this that are better.
I'm only fooling around, but do we have a motion on the floor to the effect of what Mrs. Marr just said?
So moved.
Was that you, Mrs. Marr?
Yes, it was.
Sorry, it's hard for me to see everyone when the screen sharing. I have to scroll through the, motion made by Mrs. Marr. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Kearney. All in favor, please indicate so in a roll call vote. In alphabetical order, Mrs. Cleary.
Aye.
Mr. Kearney.
Aye.
Mrs. Marr.
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Craig McClellan. Aye. Dr. Sullivan, that motion unanimously passed.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. The next item on your agenda on the superintendent's report, Dr. Sullivan, is the approval of MOU, a memorandum of understanding between the Cohasset Public Schools and the Cohasset Police Department for 2020-2021.
Thank you. Do you have that up there, Dr. Scollins? To cut to the chase, I'm not sure you need to put that up there because basically it's a rollover of last year's. Last year, several of the folks here helped work closely with the police to create a memorandum of understanding between the Cohasset Public Schools and Cohasset Police Department regarding our school resource officer, who is Officer Taylor. And this is just adding what we did last year to this year. We've agreed on it, and we just need approval from our end by the school committee. I know the whole team here has reviewed the MOU, and it hasn't changed. So I look to a vote just to approve that, Chairman McClellan.
Sure, and I guess just so that the members of the community understand what the memorandum of understanding is, maybe people do have an understanding of what that is, but it's basically the general agreement of the relationship between the Cohasset Public Schools and the Cohasset Police Department, and and the way that the two entities, I think, operate with one another. And I mean, if you have any better description, you can certainly offer it, Dr. Sullivan, but I just want everyone to understand what it is. It's just a document that we vote on each year that governs the nature of the relationship between those two entities in town, as there is some overlap. There's a school resource officer, their participation and attendance at certain school events, things of that nature.
That's correct. You know, we value our school resource officer here and the work that he does, but it's a, you know, obviously he is a policeman in town, so we do have to make sure we have the delineation between what he's doing here, what he's doing there, what he's providing for us, and that's what the MOU spells out. And it also spells out, you know, how we get work together to ensure he's, you know, doing what the memorandum asks, and that has all been worked out very collegially with the Cohasset Police Department.
Okay, and as Dr. Sullivan stated, this is the same essential language that we voted on last year. So are there any points of discussion amongst the committee members on the MOU? Mrs. Marr.
I just have a question that we can follow up on later, or not a question, but a comment. In the evaluation section, it articulates that the SRO should compile throughout the course of the year certain metrics in terms of the activities that they're involved in and engaged in. And although I'm sure the numbers aren't statistically significant, I'm wondering if maybe in subcommittee and security subcommittee, we could look at anything to see if there are enhancements or changes to our student handbook or to how we approach building safety and security that might be helpful going forward.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
It is. Any other points of discussion?
Just one thing just to add is that, you know, we always have our yearly safety training, and we're doing that virtually this year. You know, everything is happening. It's just a little different. So, you know, certainly Officer Taylor will be in the building. He'll be out and about. He one of the great things that we're able to do with Officer Taylor is he does a great job connecting with kids, and you know, his ability to connect with them in the younger years, to get to know them as they go through our schools. It's just so important for not only for our schools, but for the community, for the kids. That's what's most important. So, you know, I support that and the work that he does with them.
Thank you. Okay, is there a motion on the floor to approve the memorandum of understanding between the Cohasset Police Department and Cohasset Public Schools 2020-2021 academic year?
So moved.
So moved. Oh, jinx.
Motion made by Mr. Kearney. Is there a second?
Second, Lydia St. Ange.
Seconded made by Mrs. St. Ange. All in favor, please indicate so in roll call fashion in alphabetical order. Mrs. Colery.
Aye.
Mr. Kearney.
Aye.
Mrs. Marr.
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye. Craig McClellan. Dr. Sullivan, that motion unanimously passed. So that MOU is approved once again.
Thank you all.
Dr. Sullivan, the next item, and I'm just reading this because you mentioned that you
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah. Is the kindergarten tuition issue.
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Collins, do you have a form to share with that?
Oh, that's weird. Wait a minute. Sorry, I've got a couple of screens going. Can you see it, or do I need to bring it?
There it is.
Okay.
So, yeah, so the question was posed by the committee, and I believe it was posed by a parent too, and it's a good one, is to look at our kindergarten full-day tuition and to see what we could do, or could we do anything to potentially reduce that fee for parents because of the situation that's at hand right now. We were in a similar situation last year when we were able to look at it, and I believe this is one of the areas we were able to provide a bit of a refund for. If I'm incorrect on that, my brain just might not be working as well as I want it to right now. But I think that's correct. It's a little different though when you're looking at, and I should say, you know, that I hope at some point in my tenure here that we're able to create a situation where we have no full day kindergarten charge. I would very much like that. I know it's easier It's not the easiest thing to do, and there's things that we may have to give to make that happen. So I say that in a hopeful way, but I also know there's a lot of things we want to be able to do, and there are some tough times ahead of us. But I just, from a philosophical standpoint, I'd really like to be able to do that. So the point I'm making here, though, I'm trying to make, is that it's a little bit different when you're looking back at the end of the year to provide a refund than when you're sitting at the beginning of the year and you're collecting monies to put a program together, because it involves the paying of salaries, money taken in to pay those, and the money that goes out to provide those salaries. And at this point, and I would let, of course, Sue Owen, our Director of Finance and Operations, speak if you have something to add to this, Sue. But it does not appear, looking at our current salaries, that and the setup of where we are, that we're able to provide any type of lessened fee at this point. We would be in a situation like we were last year, where we're looking at the end of it to see if we can, based on what the year had provided, to provide an appropriate refund if we can. And last year we were able to. We don't know, for instance, October 28th, if we're going to shift anything one way or another. We don't know at the end of January if we're going to be in a different place. In the spring, if we're going to be a different place. Maybe we are more full-time. Maybe we're more full back. I have no idea. But it does lend some credence to the thought of, what I believe is the only thing we can do at this point fiscally, is to be able to refund as opposed to lessen the fee. So anyway, I wanted to just give that. You see the numbers up there. And Sue, I don't know if you want to talk about the actual numbers, which might be a little more meaningful coming from you. And then we can let the committee discuss thoughts on this, knowing what I want to do and what I believe we're able to do, which I don't believe is offer anything of a lessened fee at this point. Sue?
If you look at the spreadsheet, we have 6 kindergarten classrooms, so there's 6 teachers and there's 6 kindergarten assistants in the classrooms. We're required to fund half-day kindergarten, so the school budget funds 50% of this program, and then the revolving funds supports the other 50%, which is where the fee comes in. So if you just look at the staff salaries, very little supplies and materials spent at all out of the revolving. Most of it's absorbed in the school budget. With the number of children in full-day kindergarten, this was as of last Friday, I have 103. I know I just saw a different number in enrollment. I don't know if some of those are homeschooled or some of those are remote. It brings in a revenue of about $360,000. And then with our expenditures, which is the salaries, about $353,000. So it leaves us a total balance of about $7,200, which is cutting it pretty close, which is why, we've talked about it. And to give a refund up front or reduced fee up front wouldn't be feasible at this point. To follow it throughout the year and maybe do what we did last year and reevaluate as the year goes on. And, if things change and there is an excess of funding, we could consider the refund. But right now, I think we're too close. We had a small carryover from last year, which is about $48,000. I believe we probably ended the year with about 150, and we refunded the difference. So at this point, I think it's something that we should follow and just relook at it in the spring.
One point I also want to make is just, a little push for the quality of instruction. Remember now, we have 2 adults in the room for what could amount to 8 to 10 students. That's pretty good attention. I'm not getting that in the kindergarten situation I'm in the town I live in. This is, high quality teaching happening and very safe because of the amount of kids. I mean, think about that teacher to student ratio. So, there is something to be said for that. But like I said, I completely understand the question and the thought. It just comes down to a financial dilemma for us, quite frankly, from an operational standpoint.
Right.
And now I guess, go ahead, Sue.
sorry. It was a good exercise for me, because now when we talk about funding free kindergarten, we know we need at least another $350,000 minimum to come up with, if we're going to absorb it and reduce the fee down to zero and make it free. So that's really based on what our priorities are going forward.
So Chair McClellan, I'll leave it to you then for discussion or questions, anything you want.
Yeah, so any members of the school committee want to discuss this issue? I think it's fairly important to a lot of parents out there. Well, we know, parents that have kindergartners. So any members of the committee have any points of discussion?
Sure. I would like to say that I've been on record to say that I don't think it's fair that people in our community pay for kindergarten. We're only 86% of the state of Massachusetts gets free kindergarten. And I think that we should, and I know there's been some discussions of this, I just think that it puts families in a tough position, because not only do they have, small children that they're trying to raise, this is a big incumbence on families. It's $3,800. It's like doubling their property taxes for the year. So I just want to say that I think we should work together, hopefully in the future. I know that's been talked about. I just like to see it a reality.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney. Anyone else? Mrs. Marr.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Owens, for putting this together. It is good to see the numbers split out like this. And I agree that at this point, we're not in a position to, scale back. We haven't even had day one of learning. And I think that we need to see, to Dr. Sullivan's point, how this evolves and how the children respond, and watch it. As I said to Mr. McClellan earlier today, I said, it's like an audible at the line of scrimmage. We got to adapt and adjust, during this whole situation. And then to Mr. Carney's point about getting to a position of free, full day kindergarten, I think it's everybody's goal. And we, this situation kind of takes our mind off sometimes the bigger picture, but perhaps we look at a scaling back of the fee over a period of time where we can get to zero, because I think we all agree that finding $350,000 in any budget in any year would be quite challenging, to fully fund kindergarten. So we should put our brains to work and figure out how can we progressively reduce the tuition over a shorter period of time, so that we can be fully funded from our operational budget.
Thank you, Mrs. Marr. Anyone else? Okay, I do have a few things to say. So I feel pretty strongly about this issue. I feel for a lot of the students, or all the students entering school this year, especially those with special education needs, and also our kindergartners and our seniors, because the kindergartners are just starting out their public school experience and the seniors are wrapping it up. And this is a suboptimal year to be doing either of those. So I'm personally particularly sensitive to the needs of those students and their families. And I completely understand and sort of sympathize with the position of parents who opted for full-time kindergarten who, really aren't getting that. In my opinion, yes, there's obviously we're providing, we're going to have a model set up to provide full-time instruction and a full-time, learning model, but only a very small portion of that is going to be, or a small percentage of that, smaller percentage, less than 50%, is going to be offered in person. And for the developmental stage and age of kindergartners, in-person instruction is critical. And remote instruction, I think, is somewhat of a fallacy for someone of that age. So if I am a kindergarten parent and I have elected for, or I've opted for full-time kindergarten, and I'm being charged what everyone else has been charged in the past when they received 5 days of in-person instruction for their kindergartner, I am not happy with this setup. I am also questioning why, if someone elected half day, they have access to a very comparable amount of remote instruction that I have access to, even though they're not paying a dime. So with those two concerns in mind, I just want to make the following comments. So I think that as to the concern that you're paying, and it's an objectively bad deal. You're not getting the same value that other people received, and that is not something I'm going to shrug away from, or a fact that I'm going to hide from as a school committee member. It's clear. It's a patently bad deal. That said, our district and our budget is built around the expectation of the revenue generated from the full-time kindergarten. And our, as you can see from the shared document, our kindergarten program is paid for by that tuition. And this situation is not something that we were able to foresee in enough time to figure out where this money was going to come from on the front end. I am very interested, and I want it to be a much bigger priority than, hey, we'll explore this and reevaluate at the end. I would really like to see the school district prioritize the consideration that we reimburse the parents at least some portion of the full-time tuition. I don't think it's something that we should just, casually explore and maybe revisit sometime down the road. I want it to be a priority for those families. I don't think that they're getting the same value. And I want some consideration for that as a school committee member. And I feel very strongly about it. And Dr. Sullivan and Dr. Scollins, I would like you to keep that in mind as a priority. And I want, Mrs. Owen, I want you to try and identify areas in the budget where it may be able to give some give and take, so that we can at least offer reimbursement, which in my opinion is suboptimal. As I think Dr. Sullivan stated, I would like to be able to offer a refund at this point, but it's not something we can do. We can't operate like that. We can't offer the program and refund the money up front. It's just not in the financial cards for us. The economics of it don't work, and it's disappointing. And I have, neighbors and friends that have kindergartners that have voiced, this concern to me, and I really do feel for them. And so I just want to make it clear that I'd like that to be a priority. With regards to the, so that sort of answers the, where's our refund? I think that a reimbursement, while not, necessarily as desirable, is at least some sort of consolation there. With regards to the concern that there's a little bit of a disparity between, well, not a little bit, but it's the halftime students, or half-day students, I should say, they're basically having access to the same amount of remote instruction. But if you think about it, it's all relative. They are not getting anywhere near the same amount of in-person instruction as the families elected the full-day program. Even though no one is getting the same level of in-person instruction. If you break it down, the half-day families are getting about 5 hours a week of in-person instruction. The full-day families are getting 12. So that's over 100% more. And as Dr. Sullivan said, it's going to be even more intensive because there is a much better, more favorable ratio, student-teacher ratio. And so the instruction should be even more intensive. And so, obviously the hope is, and I think Dr. Scollins alluded to this, that, the in-person experience will be maximized as much as possible. And that goes for the kindergarten program as well. Also to this point of, the tuition, because, it is a relevant and objectively, I think, justifiable concern. But if you think about it in terms of other options, It's $3,500 for the year, which, as I stated, I am going to be very aggressive about seeing that some of it is reimbursed once we get through the year. And we understand also, right now, we don't even know what's going to be offered in the spring semester. We might be, hopefully, if everyone's optimistic and everything goes in the right direction, who knows? We might be back into full-time kindergarten in the spring semester. So to offer full reimbursement right now wouldn't make sense anyway. But if you just think about it in terms of care, if you were to, opt for a different scenario like a private kindergarten or daycare, for just those 2 days a week, can you not hear me, Dr. Sullivan?
No, I can hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Is my screen, is something showing on the screen?
No.
Okay, good.
I just saw a crazy reaction from you, so I didn't know if I was speaking on mute or something like that.
No, I must have hit something. Dr. Scollins said something.
Right.
My email was on the screen for a brief second, so I'm sorry. I
So
apologize for that.
just to quickly wrap up, if you're opting for daycare or some sort of private child care for 2 days a week, it's going to be somewhere around $800 a month, or a few $100s a month, and you multiply that times the however many 8 months or so that we're in school. That's going to be more than $3,500. So it is not as good. It's not as good a deal as other families have gotten, as I got when my daughter was in kindergarten. And that is absolutely true. And that is why we are going to explore that reimbursement, but we just can't refund the money up front because we don't have the money to do it, to run the program. So I think better to have kindergarten and be able to offer that than refund a portion of the money to the families at this juncture. So that's my comment. I'm just going to look, because I know this is sort of an issue of, this is an impactful issue for some families. I'm just going to look at the Q&A to see if there are any comments in the community about this.
Mr. McClellan, while you're looking at the Q&A, may I add a question?
Of course, yeah.
I'm wondering if in this, as we kind of maybe intensify our focus on this issue, because I was one of the lucky recipients of a refund last year with, now a rising first grader, might there be a way to kind of make a gradual plan of like decreasing it over years? So I don't know, can that be part of our approach? Like it becomes less and less over time? I mean, I'm with you. I would love to pay no extra for kindergarten. And I also struggle with this model for kindergartners. It's just a tough one. But I'm just wondering if that can be considered, like, okay, just a little bit less over time to ease the transition.
I can probably answer that, to the fact that we have discussed that in Finance and Facilities Committee. And we've talked about that often, about, like you said, maybe going down from 1 year to 75%, and then the next year to 50, and the next year to 25. It's been discussed, and I'm happy to say that those discussions are they're being made, and it's definitely, and hopefully we can put that into some of the goals of this school committee year, of looking for ways to try to fund it in a way that it can go forward. That said, I hear what you're saying, Craig, as far as the rebates. It's not exactly what we wanted it to be. However, like last year, we decided, because it wasn't anything, that we were able to refund folks. And I'm proud that we did that as a committee. And I know that we're always looking out for the best of the school, not only the school, but of the parents. So that said, Lydia, I totally agree with you. And I'm hoping and praying that we'll be able to do something like that in the future, because it is a burden on the families to come up with that kind of money. And like I said earlier, and hopefully we can come up with something that solidifies that.
I think it's a great suggestion, that phased approach, Mr. St. Orange, and I think that's a pretty prudent course of action. And I'd love to see that happen, because I agree, it would be good. And I think Dr. Sullivan, Dr. Scollins also agree with that sentiment, that it would be nice. I think you actually voiced that expressly earlier, Dr. Sullivan, that you'd like to offer free kindergarten at some point.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But I do understand Ellen's comment as well. It's it's just a tough thing to make happen. We have to be thoughtful about it and really plan for it. But it's also, it's important to hear the committee's thoughts on this as a priority too, in terms of where we may be as we near the end of the year, and what we may want to do with anything we have. So that's important to hear that. So thank you for that.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you so much for that presentation, and Mrs. Owen, I think it was helpful for everyone to see that it's it's a large amount of cash that we need to run the program, and it's impossible to find that amount of money laying around. So at this point, moving on, Dr. Sullivan, in your report, I think the last agenda item is the faculty child accommodations.
Yes. Do we have a spreadsheet for that? I think we did, but let me talk about it for a moment. To bring us back to last meeting, and I apologize, we weren't able to really articulate where it was an excellent question, very fair question, where the funding source may come from for the thought of having staff members who have their students go to Cohasset Public Schools, have their students in more than 2 days. So for us, it would be the 4 days, potentially from a remote learning room aspect. I could work with the association to determine if it's something that would be able to offer on the Wednesday as well, if they're in teaching, and that's another matter. But what I'm really asking for right now is, we're going to show you where we think we can get the funding, but I do want to explore that one more time. I also want to tell the committee that there's a possibility of some teachers needing to do other means to try to care for their children, which would require them to take a leave if their childcare has fallen through because of COVID concern. There's, as you know, there's the Federal Family Coronavirus Relief Act. I think it's Relief Act, FFCRA, which it does allow for staff who have childcare issues because of the COVID-19 pandemic to take some time to be with their children, and it's some paid time. And remember, just from a financial standpoint, we'd be paying them, and then would also be paying their substitute to come in, and that's a federally funded act that many of them will qualify for and are entitled to. So it is a consideration. Like I said before, I do want to try to do everything I can for the teachers in terms of providing this if I can. But I do understand. Your question was a good one. Where would the money come from? Clearly, it isn't articulated in our grant, and we'll explain that a little later when we get into the grant funding. But I'll let Sue talk a little bit about where the money might come from. Essentially, what we're looking at right now is 4 activity aids, and Sue can talk about what that would cost. And those activity aids would be one for every building, one for each building, I should say, who would be in we call it a remote learning room, and would be caring for and sort of supervising, I should say, the students of staff who come to Cohasset schools. And that would be on those, if you were a staff member whose student was in the A cohort, then this room would be available for the students on Thursday and Friday. And if you were in the B cohort, this room would be available for them on Monday and Tuesday. So that's what I'm asking. And I know there's some conversation that might have to happen on behalf of the committee, but I wanted to just see all the factors. Sue, can you articulate some of those thoughts regarding, first of all, the cost of what the activity aids would be?
Do you want me to share my screen?
Yeah, that would be good.
What
Sue, you're on mute, just so you know when you talk.
Okay. Oh, why is that?
So we talked about the cost of the activity aids. What I tried to do was I went through, and Leslie's going to bring it up. I went through a spreadsheet. I put together all of our positions.
Is this the one you want, Sue, or you want the other one?
The other
The
one,
other
please.
one.
Okay.
So I went through all the positions that all our new hires. So I listed on the spreadsheet who's left, what salary step and lane they were on, and then who replaced them and what salary step and lane they were on. And you can see.
That's the new hire. Sorry, excuse me. Is that the one?
Yes,
Oh, it
That
is.
was the one. I'm sorry.
that was the one.
All right.
I mean, I was trying to articulate where we could come up with some of the money. So quick overview, it's by school, it's by, the purple is just flagging me of what's still open. We have 10 to 12 open positions still. So I'm a little hesitant to say we have savings right now because we haven't filled those positions. But if I look at it objectively, we have about 440 something thousand.
$443,935.
$443,000 in savings. Now, I know Mr. McMullen in his budget presentation, he claimed about $200,000 in retirement savings, and he claimed an elementary school teacher that we weren't going to replace. So out of that 443, we would take out the 200 that's already been claimed, and then the elementary teacher. So now we're down to about $200,000. So, I mean, right now where it stands, it looks like we're going to have about $200,000 in savings. But again, I'm hesitant just because we still have 10 open positions. You know, I'm confident that we'll hire, smart, but we really don't know what's going to happen. And as Patrick said, if we have some staff that exercise their right to be out, we'll be paying them for 12 weeks salary and paying a salary for the replacement teacher. So I am keeping that, my objective open on what we really have as a savings right now, but that's where we would probably look. The four activity assistants are not extremely costly. I mean, I think they make about $14 an hour. So, I mean, for 6 hours a day, they're about $14,000 a year, multiplied by 4. So, I mean, it's not a big number, but it's also a number that, if we go forward with it, can we support it? The other alternative that came up is, if we couldn't afford it, do we charge for it? And I know, we're trying to get away from fees, but we could charge a small fee to help offset the cost of having, for lack of a better word, a study hall or study room for these remote students. I don't know if there's anything Patrick or Leslie want to add to that. I mean, I'm trying to put the numbers out there so we can kind of see where we are.
No, I think that's accurate. I mean, that's our best bet to try to create the money for these positions, is really looking at, the savings we might be able to accrue. It's not a tremendous amount of money, for these aids, but it is, it is something. And that is our best bet for a funding source.
Okay, members of the committee, I think Mrs. Mara, you had your hand raised first.
Thank you. Thank you for this report, Sue. What I did, because we have open positions that are not, I think it was column H when the report was up there, that had no salaries in those boxes. And some of the salaries we had budgeted for, like the part-time custodian, other things like elementary teen chair. So I went in and plugged in those numbers, or long-term sub. I think it's when you have a long-term sub or a permanent sub, it's step 1, column 1, step 1. So I think our number is much lower than what this shows. I show a little over $100,000 in surplus, which at this time of year to have that in salaries is not an awful lot compared to where we've been in the past. So then to go out and allocate what did you say, 14, 28,
It was about 50 something thousand.
$6,000 out of a projected, salary cushion is problematic for me, because even just plugging in base numbers or what we budgeted for in some of these new positions, they could go up, they could go down. And so financially, I continue to struggle with this. That's what I want to say. And if we could maybe run this again and put in the numbers that aren't filled in column H, so that we can really see what we might be expending on new salary, that would be great. Or I could send you what I did, Sue.
Okay. Well, some of those salaries were going to come from grants revolving, which is why I didn't put them in, because I was looking strictly at the school budget itself. But there are some, like I said, that are still open, that I'm not really sure what we're going to hire those positions at. They could be higher, they could be lower. I don't know.
Right. But we know what ESPs are going to cost, and so we have an ESP at the Joseph Oswald School that won't come out of a grant if it's not kindergarten. We have the elementary team chair. We know where we were. We should protect that salary. That's an open position. Some of the other ones, the part-time custodian, we put it in the budget, and that's not grant or revolving. So I would put that in there.
We did just hire the elementary chair.
Okay, so we know what that number is. The 0.5 lead guidance counselor, we increased that staff by 0.5. So that number's not in here. So I think we need to get more of these numbers in for positions we know that are going to be filled.
Okay. No, I totally understand. I mean, when I'm looking at, like, for the instructional assistant or the ESP, I don't know what we're going to hire them in, because they can come in from step 1 to step 5.
Right. It could be between 22 and 20.
So definitely could ballpark it.
Yeah. We could just, split it in the middle. It could go one way or the other.
No, I can absolutely do that. I mean, the ones I wasn't certain what we would hire them in at, those are the ones that I left blank, because I'm really not sure. Like long-term subs, they come in at step 1, but after so many days, they go to their actual step and lane. So I didn't estimate that as well.
Some of the issue is we're trying to estimate, but we do know the time is moving, and these folks will, if we're not able to provide something, I do believe they're gonna, some of them anyway, will probably take FFCRA, and then we will be in a position of hiring additional staff. So it's kind of like anything else in this whole formula, it's a tough, situation, but I do believe that it might be more fiscally appropriate to try to provide this based on the thought of people taking FFCRA and then hiring on for them, just as a thought. I know it's an estimate, and there's some give and take. It's not a tremendous amount of money, but you're right, Alan, it's not exact numbers. It's pretty hypothetical. But I think that's the best we could come up with for a financial source for this, if I'm listening and hearing Sue correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And you would still have one in the high school, even after when we were talking about it at the last meeting.
Well, that would be up to, it's like anything else. It is an operational thing, but I think this is one of those. Some of the operational concerns are so vexing and community based that I think that this is one of those that, I would want some input from the committee before, just as every other superintendent's getting before he makes these or she makes these type of decisions. So I do want to get your thoughts on it. And if that was the thought of the community, of the committee, then, I could consider that. But, what I'm looking at right now is that, I don't know how that would play out. It may or may not play out that, you know, we're gonna have staff that want that. I mean, the spreadsheet that I did send out to folks, the survey rather, did show some folks who have high school students and middle school students who would want that type of care, but I don't know. I don't know.
Mrs. Caleri, you had a point you want to make.
Do we have data now about anyone that will not be able to be in person and will require long-term subs?
Could you say that again? I'm sorry, Ashley.
Do we have information now about the number of people in the district that will be out and require long-term subs?
I have some information about a couple of folks who we've had to attend to, but right now there aren't a large amount of those.
Okay, are they accounted for in the numbers that we just looked at?
No. But there are, I mean, there are just a couple. And that's possible things. It's not, we haven't finished the kind of the inner workings on those situations yet, but it's not a large amount. But again, this FFCRA thing could be, it could have several folks, and that would add to that. You know, it would be, we're paying them what their rights are for FFCRA, which is, I believe, 12 weeks at 2/3 pay, and then there's other things that kick in, and then there's we'd have to hire their substitutes.
Right, so I like the idea of exploring a manageable fee that this becomes available for. I wonder what the steps are to doing that and what the timeline would look like. It seems like that should be done like yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, here are the steps.
I know it wasn't possible. I'm not implying at all that someone didn't do what they were supposed to do when they were supposed to do it. This timeline is like difficult, but I just am wondering if there's an expedited way that we can do that.
There is. We started this. We initiated this discussion last time, and we should finish it now. Okay, and here's the deal. We have some numbers here. Ellen, you made much needed, I think, you gave much needed input on the numbers. So even taking in consideration your adjusted figures, we're looking at around $100,000 figure, which you acknowledge is low for that surplus at this time of year. I agree, and we identified that the cost of this would be somewhere around $56,000, right? Mrs. Owen, is that true? 14,000 times 4. Okay, we need 4 of these individuals. So $56,000. If we subsidize half of it, that brings that figure down to $28,000. Okay, so now how many? You just figure out how many people are going to need this in those 4 rooms. How many people are involved in that, and then that's the fee that they can pay, and that's the service we're able to offer. We subsidize part of this. We don't subsidize all of it. It's an important thing. I'm in favor of it for not only the fiscal and economic reasons you mentioned, Dr. Sullivan, but also for the operational aspects of it, in which, you know, I think it's important for the Cohasset teachers to be able to have this option for children that aren't able to be on their own, especially those ages, because it helps us roll out and execute and implement the plan that we voted on, because otherwise the teachers aren't going to be available. And not only are they not going to be available to help teach our children in the district, but they're also potentially going to be forced to take leave, paid leave under the FFCRA, putting us in an even worse financial situation. So I think that we need to make a decision here. We have enough rough figures to make a decision, and I think we should do that. So let's discuss it, and everyone let each other know where you stand and what you want to do here. That's
okay, I just want to be clear what you were saying. Your thought is that the teachers would pay a fee?
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
There are some other towns around us that did not. There's a variance, but there are towns that have allowed their teachers to not pay a fee, and then there are some that aren't even offering it. So there is a variance.
That's right. So this is a combination because we don't have a ton of money, like we just told the kindergarten parents, you know, that they're paying full, okay? We don't have a ton of money to be dedicating this. We have some that we can dedicate to it. We want to make it happen, but it's just another facet of this whole mess where we're all going to have to come together and everyone's going to have to cooperate and contribute here. Mrs. St. Ange.
Yeah, so I can only speak for myself, but I'm a teacher and I'm a mom. And if my district said, hey, we will make sure that your kids are in a learning environment for the school day while you are at work, and you have to pay less than what you would pay a babysitter at home, which like bare minimum is going to be like $200 for 2 days minimum, especially around here. I would say absolutely. They're safe. They're accounted for. They're with someone who knows how to use Zoom. All of these are positives. And I think that if we can come to, you know, a reasonable price, like these are teachers, they are doing a duty for our community. They are taking care of our children. Let's help them take care of theirs for a fair fee.
Agreed.
Okay, there's a couple of comments from the community on this issue. I just want to read them so that we can address those as they come in. Mr. Bob Pattison of 19 Parker Ave asks, would you extend that courtesy or / benefit for Cohasset teachers to children of Cohasset taxpaying residents that are teachers in other districts? So I think he must be a teacher in another district and is wondering if we can get that, he could get that, take advantage of that service here in Cohasset.
Well, this was the original thought. That was what the commissioner had asked, and the numbers were around 70 for us. So that was not doable from a safety standpoint with lunches and all that in the rooms. It was deemed to be sort of too high for us to be able to provide that.
Right, we don't have the square footage for that, so which is why we were then sort of talking. We framed the discussion around Cohasset teachers' children.
That's right.
Okay, Miss Mary Beth Reardon of 150 Lamberts Lane asks, can teachers staff the room ourselves? Can I supervise the study room and help students during one of my free periods, and we can piecemeal the coverage? I have a kindergartner who can't read at all, who I'm paying full price to send in person 2 days a week. How can my kids get the help they need?
Well, so that would mean that, you know, you'd have staff asking other staff in other buildings to care for their kids and to be able to run that remotely. I don't believe that our elementary structure allows that in our learning models. We have our common planning time happening on Wednesdays. So, you know, and that's where the deepest need is for childcare. So unfortunately, I don't see that as a viable option.
Not to mention the contractual implications.
Well, even if we could, I don't think we're not yeah, that too, but we're just not structurally set up for that. Would you say that's accurate, Dr. Scollins?
I would, and I think that you have some liability issues.
Do we need to discuss whether it, I'm sure you've all thought of this and you presented a very comprehensive structure, but do we need to consider that perhaps more people will be needed to help early elementary students than would need to help high school students?
It depends on the number. So, I mean, the max number that I had in my spreadsheet, I think it was like 26, and it was pretty spread out. So I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think that's the case. And you know, in some of my conversations, I think it might even be less than that. So I don't really think, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Okay.
Another question is, can we, this is from an email that, or excuse me, a username, Calbearer, Kalberer. There's no full name or address listed. They ask, can we offer to have faculty pitch in to help, because it will be more cost effective than finding other childcare coverage? I think that was sort of the same type of question that was just asked, so I think we just addressed that. Ken Belazis asks, why can't the teachers telework on the days they don't have childcare?
They have to be with children during, because they're in person 4 days a week, the teachers.
So our teachers are, our teachers are teaching, they're in the building teaching 4 days a week because they have kids in front of them. At least 4.
Mrs. Reardon followed up with, I think we were saying that it would be difficult because you'd have to have teachers go to different buildings. She's saying if it's just a room and an aide, that can be anywhere.
Well, I'm foreseeing needing a room in each building because of the spread of the teachers that are going to be asking for it. So, or based on my count, I mean, if the count is different, if it's all at one building, that's fine. I mean, but again, we don't have, I don't have 4 spaces in the high school, for instance.
That's
right?
why we looked at it so that each building could have a room. There's not, that's part of our issue, is that we're tight on space. So we can only provide what we can provide in each building.
I think I asked a similar question last time we were having this discussion, and Dr. Scollins, you pointed out that like the children of a certain age have to be at a certain school.
Well, it has to do with the groupings of the students. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Right. That span, you can't go a larger span. I think it's 3-year difference, like in the same space, or 4-year difference. So yeah, you guys have to be careful.
Okay, Mr. Kearney, do you have any comments on this?
It's a very difficult situation. I mean, you know, we feel for both sides. I mean, you got teachers that are trying to do the same struggles that everybody's going through. It's a really difficult situation, and there's no really good answers.
Can everyone still hear me? Because I have a bad internet connection.
Yes.
Yeah, you're fine, yeah.
Okay, Ms. St. Ange?
Yeah, I just have one more comment, I think. I think that Mrs. Reardon's point is a very good point, that our youngest students, I would argue even beyond kindergarten, you know, even if you are a reader, you are not necessarily a reader and comprehender of directions in the younger grades. That goes a long way for some people, but it would behoove us, I think, to look at the building specific numbers and think about just ratios, just so that kids are able to attack their work in a timely manner during the day, you know, so that kids can push through that work. I would argue that, you know, even Deer Hill kids and up, mostly, there are always exceptions, would be able to read directions and execute with a grown-up in the room, but at the Osgood level, it might warrant more help.
So maybe I misunderstood Mrs. Reardon's point. I thought Mrs. Reardon was saying that we could have multiple rooms in one building. Maybe
I think she was pointing out that it could be in any building. Like you wouldn't have to have, you could have this, just because they're elementary school students, I think they could do this, you know, the remote days sort of study hall day in any building. It didn't have to be the elementary school.
No, that's what I thought the point she was making. You know, so, and is that what you're saying? I guess I'm just missing it. Lydia, you're saying that.
I thought there was a part of her question pointing out she has a kindergartner who is not a reader, nor does she need to be yet. She's entering kindergarten, who needs help guiding through that work and through the day. And she was saying, could I help in my own kindergartner's group? That's how I understood it. I may be misinterpreting. So I'm just saying, you know, at that Osgood level, just to be aware of, you know, like the help that's being provided to get those kids through their work might need, you know, grown-ups reading it and helping to interpret it for them.
Right, and that's what that activity aid would do. And it's a small enough group that would be okay. Because we also have to remember that we can't pack these rooms. We have to adhere to the safety protocols, right? So we can only get, you know, depending on the room, the size of the room, you can only have, what have we gotten, about 8 to 10, maybe a little higher sometimes, but you can only put that so many kids in the room. So it's really going to limit it.
I think the idea was to have maybe like Osgood kids at Cohasset High School, for instance, I think that was the thought, that it doesn't need to be at Osgood. And I haven't explored that. But I guess the space is not plentiful in any of our areas. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Leslie, you had some issue with that from a,
Yeah, I mean, everything is larger at the, where are they going to go to the bathroom? I mean, there's a lot of logistics. You're going to send a 5-year-old into a bathroom with a 12th grader. I don't know. I mean, I think those are things you kind of have to think about. That's why if you keep it in their own school, everything's their size, the kids are the same age, and you could combine your K through 5. That's okay, right? Lots of schools are combined that way. But I'm not comfortable with putting little kids. We're not set up that way. We don't. It's a high school that has a preschool program built into the building.
Yeah, good point. Okay, I'm just trying to. There's so much to this.
I know.
I'm a little.
Yeah.
The protein in my brain is running out. I'm just trying to keep it all together. So yeah, thank you.
Moving on, just a couple more comments about this. Ken Belazis asked again, he comments again, this time saying, the entire globe is struggling with the challenge of juggling childcare with professional responsibilities. We are struggling with the concept of asking our district to accommodate the needs of the faculty when the rest of the district is facing the same challenge. It feels like the district is bearing the entire burden, and ultimately our children are bearing the burden when it is ultimately the faculty's issue.
Can I speak to
This
that?
sort of, go ahead, Mrs. Caleri, yes.
I agree that everyone is dealing with this issue. It is a challenge for almost everyone. What we have been asked by the community is to get the kids into the buildings as much as we can. What that requires is teachers. While in an ideal world, everyone would be able to manage their own childcare limitations, it is our responsibility, I believe, as a community, if we are asking these teachers to show up in person, and if we have any ability to lessen the stress and the burden of their own children's needs, in order for them to be able to concentrate on teaching our children, we are responsible to do that. And that's how I feel.
And I agree with you, Ashley. I think that, again, this is not an easy call. However, we are their employers and we have to make it easy for them to come back. I think we're fortunate to have the teachers that we have. And I understand, like, it could be, childcare is everybody's situation. However, we're their employer initially. And what are we going to do to help them? And this is a way to help them. And we love our teachers. I'm sorry, they're a big priority. And I know it sounds tough being, I have to deal with it too. We have to deal with it. Everybody in the community has to deal with it. But essentially, we're their employers, and we feel strongly that we want to make it as easy as possible for them to come back, and we want to make sure they're safe and their kids are safe.
Irini Nestoridi, 39 Walnut Hill Lane, states, if this was going to be a fee-based service, could you explore if the Cohasset Recreation could do this, and also children of working parents could be included in this as well? The governor gave the option for daycare services to be extended / provided during remote learning days. Thank you.
Yeah, there was some relaxation on the, I believe it's the EEC licensure requirement for municipalities to be able to provide these remote learning situations. That really, in my view, would be a town thing.
That's right.
And I say that, respectfully, but I do think it has to be separated from the schools, and it would have to come from the town. And I know there's been some chatter about it and potential looking at it, but I don't believe that can be a school-based program in a town building for a variety of reasons. I think that's basically made for municipalities, and I would be in favor of it, but I don't really feel like that's a school program for us.
Okay. Finally, there's just a comment here by Declan Lee of 67 Ripley Road. Agree with the committee's comments. There's a benefit to help find a solution to help teachers, since there's a greater benefit to the community by doing so, with some reasonable cost being borne by the teachers, as was suggested. That just seems to be a comment. Is there any other discussion from the committee? Mrs. Marr?
I just have one more comment. Well, one, I did the quick math, and so if it's a 50-50 split with about 26 kids and $28,000 over an annual period of time, that's about $1,000 for a fee, so that we understand, what it means to each individual teacher. And then the other thing is, so we have these children with an activity aid. I think Dr. Scullin spoke to logistics. We have to understand mass breaks, lunch breaks, outdoor time, and a little bit of physical activity, because I think the last thing we want is for these children, no matter what the age, to be sitting at a table in a classroom for the duration of the school day. So it's going to be a little bit more involved, I think, than just kids of teachers sitting at a table. We do this, I believe we have this responsibility to make sure that the whole child is taken care of.
Yeah, they would follow a scheduled day. They would have all those things built in. You're absolutely right, Mrs. Marr. They have to. We couldn't have them sitting there.
It would, a 6.5 hour study hall isn't going to work.
No.
You're going to have a day for them.
And I think, Mrs. Marr, you're pointing out a lot of the operational hurdles that we'd have to overcome that I think have been somewhat considered by our superintendent, assistant superintendent. But, there's a lot to it. It's not just as simple as finding the money and putting them in a room. I completely agree. And, I think that there are challenges associated with this, but I think that we need to make the decision sooner rather than later, because we need to post the positions. We need to get candidates interviewed and hired. We need to find the spaces. We need to be able to plan for this. School is starting right around the corner. I don't think it's even going to be possible to do this immediately for the teachers, but it's going to be something that hopefully we'll be able to offer in the not too distant future. And that's why I don't want to wait another 2 weeks to make the decision. So that's just my personal, view. As chairperson, I'd like to have some sort of decision made on this and some sort of guidance given to the superintendent before we leave the meeting tonight. But I think that those concerns you raised, Ellen, Mrs. Marr, are very cogent and relevant. So, Mrs. St. Ange.
Maybe this is already something that is assumed by everybody, but the math seems simple for Mrs. Marr, about $1,000 per family. Pardon my children in the background. I just think that we should make sure that we offer maybe you don't have to pay the whole $1,000 up front. I feel like after being a teacher, not being paid all summer, fall expenses can be a little bit tight. So just making sure that there's a payment plan option or something like that. So
that 1,000 was at, you said, how many kids were you estimating, Ellen?
I think you said 26. Well, so
yeah, it might be lower than that. That's what I had for a number of people who were interested, who were Cohasset teachers. But that doesn't mean that's what it's going to play out to be at this stage. It could be much lower.
Which means the fee could be much higher because the salary doesn't change.
That's right.
So then you have to make some decisions. If you have, say, 6 children between Osgood and Deer Hill, maybe you do what Dr. Scullin's recommended and you combine them into a single building. So, but so the parents or teachers who are listening or paying attention, they understand it could be 600 with more kids. It could be 1,200. It could range. And I think it's important. I would want to know, what am I looking at? And I agree with Mrs. St. Ange, pay it in installments, because as Mr. McClellan said earlier, we could be back full time in the spring and this won't even be, a topic of conversation. So I think once this gets decided, Dr. Sullivan, and then you get hard numbers and then you can figure out what it is. But we know what the maximum amount is going to be for the whole program.
That's right.
Well, I feel like it would be nice to have a general vote, not necessarily the specifics of how we do this, but sort of, I guess, a collective voice of the school committee that shows a majority vote of what we would prefer Dr. Sullivan and Dr. Scullins to do. I don't know if that'd be helpful to you, Dr. Sullivan, Dr. Scullins. It's an operational decision, but I think it may be one of those situations where a vote on the matter might be helpful. I don't think that we can, I mean, it's going to be up to you operationally to figure out how we do it, but whether or not we do it, it may be helpful to hear the collective or majority view of the school committee. Is that something you would appreciate having on this issue?
I would, and or if you'd rather me make this decision, I would be comfortable doing that as well. But I do want to be transparent that I want to try to do this to help the teachers if I can. So I do feel that these matters are community decisions in many ways, because there's a lot of folks affected by these the decisions one way or another. And right now I'm trying to focus on what I know I can do, which is help my staff.
Okay, well, I think so. It would really just be a sort of vote of support if we did that for the decision to offer some form of remote learning accommodations for the members of the Cohasset faculty and their children. So I think it may be helpful if we take a vote in terms of what the majority of the committee wants to see. Is there a motion to support the superintendent's decision to offer some form of childcare accommodations to the children of Cohasset faculty members?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Kearney. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Caleri. Please vote in roll call order, in alphabetical order. Mrs. Caleri?
Aye.
Mr. Kearney?
Aye.
Mrs. Marr?
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange?
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan. So Dr. Sullivan, that's unanimous support from the school committee in this decision. So
Okay.
I bid you the best of luck in figuring that out operationally.
Well, we're going to immediately figure out how many and work from there. So thank you for that. I know all this is really, really crazily complicated, but I'm glad we can help the staff in this way. Thank you.
Okay, that was the last bullet I had on the superintendent's report. Is that your understanding of the full report, Dr. Sullivan, or are there additional items in your report?
No, that's definitely it.
Okay, so moving on to the finance report, I turn the meeting to our Director of Finance and Operations, Mrs. Susan Owen. Mrs. Owen, could you provide just an update on the grant expenditures and allocations, please?
Susan, do you want me to pull that up?
I think I have it here.
You have it? Okay.
Yep.
There it is. So initially, when we spoke about this school reopening grant, I was under the impression that it ran from September to June. After filling out the application and realizing this grant is only good through December, and we've added some positions to this that we thought would be funded completely by the grant. We got creative and we did some shuffling to try to figure out, okay, if the grant doesn't actually end in December, which it may or may not. I mean, now that we'll have to live by that deadline. If COVID continues, they may extend it. If not, we had to figure out how we were going to fund the remainder of the year to these positions. I mean, one option would be don't continue because it's a reopening grant. The other options were for the Director of Technology, which I know is an important position that we want to try to hang on to. We have, in working with the town accountant, looking at our revolving funds, our athletic revolving, our transportation revolving, has a pretty significant balance sitting in there. And the Director of Transportation and the Athletic Director's salary is not at all reflected in those revolving accounts. So we took a portion of the Athletic Director's salary and charged it to the athletic revolving, which will bring down that ongoing balance and carryover. And we did the same thing with the transportation supervisor, which would then free up money in the school budget to fund the Director of Technology and Digital Learning for the remainder of the year. And it would continue it would continue forward. So it would roll forward year after year if we decided to maintain that position. The activity assistants, custodians, we had money left in rental revolving, which we discussed at a small conversation about whether we take that out of rental revolving or we don't. It's an insignificant amount of money. We may not need those custodians after the end of December. So we could certainly look at absorbing part of that salary in the school budget. The activity assistants would be the same. We may or may not need them. If we do need them, the small bit of carryover for kindergarten, it could help offset some of the cost of the salaries for the activity assistants. I just wanted to be transparent so we know that grant does end in December. So as of January 1st, we then have to find a way to fund those positions or discontinue them. I mean, that was pretty much my update. I don't know if you have questions on that.
I'm sorry. Any members of the community, the members of the committee have questions for Mrs. Owen? Hold on, let me scroll down and see if anyone's raising their hands here. No, no one is. I do. I don't, Mrs. Owen, I don't understand. So you're saying that we can only use this money during a 6-month period?
So when we actually went in and applied and filled out the budget pages of this grant, this money has to be expended by December 31st. So it only gives us a short window to use this money.
It can't just be encumbered. It can't just be allocated. It has to be actually spent.
It has to be spent. It was my understanding initially that when Dr. Sullivan and I read it, it says it has to be obligated, but when you read further into it, it has to be expended by December 31st. So I mean, my hope is if COVID continues, they will extend that deadline like they have with some of the other grants. You know, lots of grants are 2-year grants. They've now extended them to be 3 in some cases. So, you know, I'm hopeful if that happens, then it's not, you know, it's not an option of what we need to do. But I have to plan as if it's going to end December.
Okay. Any other questions in the committee? Mrs. Marr?
Just to that point, Mrs. Owens, if they do extend the grant, we've already allocated the balance of the fund through December. So unless it's a new grant opportunity or the grant increases, it's already been all allocated for the $328,725, right? So would you anticipate that they would come up with a second grant for the second half of the year?
Well, yes, that's what I was thinking. They may or may not.
Okay.
So, because the CARES grant ends in December as well. When I went back and looked at the application for the CARES grant, which is the I think it's $58,000, that ends December 31st as well.
Right. So unless there's a new grant with a new funding source,
Correct.
half of the year,
Correct.
we will be responsible for the non-grant funded portions of these salaries as you presented them. I just didn't want anyone to think that there's a chance that won't come out of our budget. It's going to come out of our budget unless it's a brand new grant. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? There is a question from a member of the community on this. What is the difference between the two PPE line items? Why are they listed separately? What do they include? That's from Mr. Ken Belazis.
So it's just basically based on the categories that the grant worksheet gives you. So there's $20,000 that were allocated to go towards partitions and tents and signage and building PPE. And then it's the PPE supplies and materials, which is the gowns, the masks, the sanitizers, gowns, masks, sanitizers, I'm trying to think, masks. I don't have the grant application in front of me, but I can certainly get you the detail of what is going to come out of there. And we've already expended pretty much all of that already, with all the things that have been going on between all the things that the emergency management team has been purchasing for us. So, I mean, I know that's not a definitive answer. I can pull the page up if you want to give me a second, and I can tell you what else.
Yeah, I mean, this was all required material. A lot of it was required by the state for us to have. And then there's also the things we need to keep people socially distanced, you know, like the signage, the tents. So it's all it's, I guess it's a broad scope of it's personal protective equipment, if that's the way you're looking at it, Sue.
It is. It's up in front of me now, so I can, let's see. So it's just a matter of how it was budgeted. So under supplies and materials, we had, you know, other was the HVAC and air quality evaluation and testing was 12,000. We had textbooks and related software and supplies and materials that were science and reading. The other was partitions, the setup of the medical rooms, the breakout rooms, the signage. The other, which was the big ticket item, was PPE, the gloves, the masks, the gowns, the sanitizers, the shields. So, I mean, they could have been combined into one. We divided it out to kind of keep track of what we were actually purchasing. But it's all PPE, it's all stuff that we were required to start the year with.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
The TECA remote learning tuition, I think we may have covered this already in 2 prior meetings, but that is annual for high school students and first semester for younger kids, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So then if theoretically we continue the year and there is either hybrid or full remote, we'll need to come up with whatever the portion is for the little kids. I don't mean to use that term in demeaning way, but right, for tuition.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, there's another question from a member of the community, Miss Kim McAdam of 41 Pleasant Street. She asks, and she sort of did this in 2 different entries, so I'm going to try and combine them in a way that makes sense. So we have a shortfall of grant money for the second part of the year for the allocations on this spreadsheet, which include professional development, HVAC, et cetera. Am I understanding this correctly? Yet we are planning to pay 50% of the faculty childcare costs. How can we do this if we have a shortfall for staffing? There's no guarantee we will have grant money for the second half of the year, correct?
Correct. There is no guarantee. The professional development, the air quality evaluation, the science and text, reading supplies, materials, that will all be paid and expended by the end of December. So that we won't have to find funding for any of that. Right. It will just be the part-time custodians, which we may or may not need after December. We don't know. And the 2 kindergarten activity assistants, which again, we may or may not need.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from the members of from members of the committee? All right. Seeing none. Thank you, Mrs. Owen, for your report. Moving on with the agenda, I turn to agenda item E, school committee comments and communication. First on that is the mask policy review. I think Mrs. Caleri and Mrs. St. Ange, you've been sort of leading the charge on the policy issues. Do one of you want to open this issue up for discussion?
Sure. So at the last meeting, we were provided information that the school nurses passed along to Dr. Scollins and Dr. Sullivan. And we met in our policy subcommittee last week on Thursday, I think. and discussed this. There was a lot of input on this from a few attendees. And we decided that what we would like to propose for the committee's consideration is the addition of some requirements about cloth masks. You can see they're highlighted in the version of the policy that we have for review. And these were taken directly from the mass.gov website. They are suggestions and guidelines from the mass.gov site directly. And basically it's not up on the screen, so I'll read it. When cloth masks are worn, they must, and there's a bulleted list, cover the nose and mouth, fit snugly but comfortably against the side of the face, be secured with ties or ear loops, include multiple layers of fabric, allow for breathing without restriction, and be able to be laundered and machine dried without damage or change to shape. So basically what this does is this eliminates the ability for people in the buildings to use those net gaiters. What I tried to communicate in the subcommittee meeting when some folks were voicing their concerns about eliminating the use of net gaiters is that, as with everything else around COVID, I think that we are leaving ourselves opportunities for a lot of review along the way. And we, as a subcommittee, I think agreed that we would like to err on the side of caution of this policy. And we believe that that is following the recommendations from the mass.gov website. Lydia, do you have anything else to add, or Dr. Scollins?
I know that a part of the conversation and concerns brought up by community members that are completely valid, sensory issues and different kids' ability to wear different masks. And it is my understanding that if children have diagnosed sensory issues, and then we will be working directly with them on a case-by-case basis to make accommodations that are appropriate for their documented needs. And so this is speaking to the general population of what we expect for a child and an adult, anyone over the age of 2 who does not have documented needs that differ from this. So I just think that's important to remember. Like, we are still considering people's personal health needs, you know, and complying with everyone's plan. And this is a general rule that we are putting in our policies.
Okay, any other discussion from members of the committee? Now, this has been on the agenda a few times, so we've had an opportunity to discuss this a lot. I know this been an impactful issue for some. So at this point, if I don't see any other desire to make any points in the committee, so I'd ask if there are any motions on the floor to approve the face mask or face covering policy as drafted by the policy subcommittee. Not all at once.
So moved. Am I allowed to move my own policy?
Motion made by Ms. St. Ange, seconded
Second.
by Mrs. Colery. All in favor of this policy as written, please indicate so in a roll call vote, taken in alphabetical order. Mrs. Colery.
Aye.
Mr. Kearney.
Aye.
Mrs. Marr.
But I just want to note, I didn't get it in my electronic packet because I had printed everything. I didn't go and pick something up at the school, but I agree with what you did. I just haven't read it.
Okay, well, it was up on the screen a few moments ago. Do you want to look at it again before we complete the vote here?
I can put it up. Do you want me to put it back up, Mrs. Marr?
No, you know what? I can abstain. I think you'll have a majority, so that's fine.
Okay, abstention by Mrs. Marr. I, Craig McClellan. So Dr. Sullivan, that motion passes by.
I don't know if did I vote?
Excuse me, Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
So now you have 4-5. I apologize, Mrs. St. Ange. 4-5, voted 4-5 in support of that motion, Dr. Sullivan. So that policy is approved.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Mrs. Colery and Mrs. St. Ange for all the hard work, which was not necessarily, my appreciation wasn't necessarily demonstrated by my failure to take your vote, Mrs. St. Ange, but I do appreciate it. The legal counsel update. Mrs. Colery, you've been sort of leading the charge on this. Could you present?
Sure. So we have delayed the process of scheduling a time for candidates for new counsel to come in and meet the committee. We've obviously had many demands on our time and attention, as particularly the administrative leadership has. And so wanted to make sure this doesn't fall off of our radar, and want to make sure that we get a date on the calendar to have the candidates come in and talk to us.
Okay. Before we open up any discussion or questions on this, I mean, I don't know that we're voting on anything at this point. Nothing's been, I mean, it's just an update, but I know that Miss Patty Gillis, or Patricia Gillis of 492 Jerusalem Road, has been patiently waiting her comment to be addressed, and I'm just waiting for this point in the agenda to do that. She states, I want to know why we are interviewing legal counsel and potentially changing counsel. In light of what is going on, it seems that we have enough to handle with the reentry of school and all the components that arise with that issue. Changing counsel will cost so much. It will take so much time and resources to bring new counsel up to speed with ongoing legal cases. This is an issue that can be tabled to a later date. Does anyone have an answer to that? I am happy to answer that if no one else wants to answer it, but.
Go ahead, Craig. It's fine.
Okay, so I think that you make a really good point. It's a point that I think we've actually discussed in open meeting last year, and that is that the issue of cost, both financial and time, to bring new counsel up to speed. And the answer to that is that as an attorney, I can certainly appreciate that. It's never really an economically advantageous decision to switch counsel in sort of media res, so to speak. And for that reason, we're not planning on necessarily inserting them into any ongoing issues for that very reason. This is, there are other issues like future bargaining with the Cohasset Teachers Association, other contracts that we might have issues with, things in the future that we are just simply exploring, either retaining additional or different counsel for. But this isn't something I don't think we're contemplating at this point, switching counsel in any sort of ongoing active matters for the reasons that you point out. And in terms of the fact that we have enough to handle with the current reentry plan and discussion of reentry, I would absolutely concur with you there. And which is why this is sort of an ongoing agenda item, just to keep it on the radar, because it is something that we've been actually looking into for over a year now, and we just don't want to lose sight of it. And in fact, it probably would have been, I feel like accomplished or much further along had the pandemic not hit and we had to shift gears to direct all efforts and attention to the reentry plan. So hopefully that answers your question, Mrs. Gillis. And thank you for that update, Mrs. Colery. Any other questions or comments from the committee on the legal counsel issue?
No, I'd just like to thank Ashley for taking the lead. We've spent a lot of times meeting with councils, and it was a lot of time and a lot of work, just to throw that out there.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney. So moving on to the next agenda item is the School Facilities Committee. And this, like the legal counsel issue, before I do that, I'm sorry, Mr. Christopher Allen asked a question, I think maybe immediately following the vote on the face masks. Mr. Allen has expressed his position that he would like to see gaiters allowed, and obviously the face mask policy as written is a little bit more restrictive than that. He asks, why would you add restrictions for school that are not present in everyday society in Cohasset? I don't know if anyone wants to answer that. I feel like actually your presentation it sort of answered that, but if you want to reiterate the reasoning behind your policy drafting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this has been a long process of us figuring out how to safely re-enter these school buildings in configurations and with recommended procedures and protocols that are safe as possible. And I think that, you know, we have representation from parents and educators on our committee, and both agree that beginning the school year with these requirements makes sense, and that revisiting this and hoping that all is going great and we can relax these restrictions if we feel like that's the right thing to do in October is the right way to go.
I'd like to add that these are the best practice recommendations directly from the state website. So while perhaps not all of us are following these all of the time, I think in an educational setting, we always strive for best practice, and that goes for, you know, classroom management and safety and health. And that's what we're striving for with this policy.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next agenda item is the School Facilities Committee that we reconstituted in the recent past. And like the legal counsel list, this is sort of like an ongoing agenda item that I asked to have on this week's agenda because I don't want to lose sight of this, because this is a lengthy process. And we've really made no headway on this because, again, of the pandemic, and we've had to dedicate and allocate all attention and resources to reentry, which is totally sensible. But I wanted to sort of open this up for, so the school committee, the town moderator, and the board of selectmen each appoint 3 members of this committee. And we haven't appointed any yet. And I think that we have to figure out a process. Mrs. Marr, hopefully you have some suggestions on how to do that. But I want to get the ball rolling there, because I think that it's incumbent upon us to start the ball rolling, and then perhaps the moderator and the selectmen will follow suit if we get our 3 in place. I don't know if it's as simple as just throwing it out there on, 143 or the Mariner or something like that, and just saying, hey, look, or I don't know, putting up one of Mrs. St. Ange's electronic traffic signs to alert everyone to the, the fact that we're taking apps here, and please email, myself or Dr. Sullivan or Mrs. Caleri or Mr. Kearney, whoever's leading the charge here, with your, interest in a statement of why you want to do it and your resume. I don't, Mrs. Marr, do you have any suggestions on how we would sort of list it? Okay, great.
So this is called a troika appointment, and there are several committees in town that have troika appointments, one being the advisory committee, which we're all familiar with the advisory committee. And the Board of Selectmen, I want to say in July, maybe, no, it might have been July, put out that there were all these board and committee positions that were open and requiring to be filled from people within the community. One of their ongoing goals is to get more community engagement. And several selectmen posted it on their own websites, their own Facebook pages, and applications for different positions, whether it's the Housing Authority or the Recreation Commission, whatever it is, went in, have gone into the select board for various positions. This committee was included in that list, and if you go on the town website, you'll see the list of open committee and board appointments, and you'll see the application. The select board and the town moderator will not appoint anyone who hasn't submitted an application. So to that end, I think we need to do our own PR campaign along with the select board, and I'm happy to give the chair a call, Mr. McClellan, if you wish, to put it out there that this is a committee that we would like to get filled, that we're looking for interested residents who want to serve. and here's how you make yourself known, and here's how you apply for the positions.
So that sounds great. That sounds like progress. Mrs. Marr, would you be willing to do that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's awesome. That is progress. So that's all I wanted to, so I'm just going to sort of keep this on the agenda so that we're just one very small baby step to hopefully getting what I want, which is a new middle high school one day in the not too distant future. But I know I'm just one guy. But
No,
anyway, thank you.
I'm with you, Craig. I think that our buildings definitely need some help, and and like we definitely need a plan going forward of what are we going to do with the ventilation and the and all this stuff that Dr. Sullivan talked about earlier. Needs to be in the at least what are our priorities? Let's get this thing together. So I'm in favor of getting this thing moved as quickly as we can.
See, that's now we're two guys, Mr. Kearney, and we're already forming an army here. Mrs. Marr.
So just to that point, because we've had this conversation, and we had a meeting with the MSBA, or a conference call last October, and our continued diligent efforts and progress we make in making improvements to the schools and the grounds needs to continue on a parallel path with a new school facility committee. Okay, they're not charged with figuring out if we need new windows or if we need the sidewalks patched. That's really our job with the facility department and capital budget and all of that. I just want to make sure everyone understands it's not, the charge that we gave them isn't to ascertain what's leaking and what's not leaking, what needs to be painted. It's really to look big picture at the facilities and the projected needs. And we have to stay diligent in making sure that we keep what we have as in good shape as possible, because there's no guarantee with MSBA the first time or the second time. I think eventually there is, but they really don't have an appetite for any districts that let their buildings fall into disrepair, because they're hopeful to get the money, which for a district like ours is about 40 to 42% funding of the whole project.
That's a really good point. So thank you, Mrs. Marr. And hopefully you'll be prepared to update in 2 weeks as to if you were able to make any progress and what you plan to do on that. So anything else from the committee on that? Okay, moving on to the Communications Subcommittee charge, which is a new subcommittee that we've decided to form. Mrs. Kaleri, I think that you once again a lot of charge leading for you tonight. So perhaps you can present on this issue.
It's timely, actually, so I think maybe this subcommittee might be helpful in getting the word out to the community. Maybe not. Maybe we won't get everything sorted out by then, but the thought is there's a lot, obviously, of communication that comes from the district. There's some communication that comes directly from the committee to the community. And what we would like to do is create a subcommittee that is essentially designed to ensure that all of that communication, all of those communication methods work well together. And just, it's as much an effort to increase communication as it is to decrease any confusion that may potentially arise as we continue to really make an effort to make sure people are informed in a timely way about everything that's going on in the district. And I think now is a really good time for us to take a collaborative approach, as much as the district is willing to, on just making sure that we're being helpful to the district in the ways that are most needed to help with their communications efforts. And it's in the packet, I think, so I don't want to read it verbatim, but if that would be helpful, that's okay.
No, I don't think you need to do that. Thank you for the summary, Mrs. Kaleri. I think that has everyone had a chance to read the charge? Okay. I think it's excellent. I didn't have any. I didn't even have any grammatical or punctuation changes or anything like that. I think it's really well written. Did any members of the committee want to discuss the charge as written? Or I don't know, someone might have found something just because I didn't, not necessarily, doesn't mean it's all perfect.
I just have a logistics question because
Sure.
I have not been on the committee when a new subcommittee has been formed. If we approve or vote in favor of this charge to form the subcommittee, do we then move on to find members tonight, or what is the timeline on that? I'm just curious.
Yes, I would want to do that. I think it makes sense to do that. So if there's no discussion or additions, Mrs. Maher, anything on the charge?
Yeah, I read it, and thank you, Mrs. Colery, for putting it together. It's very clear and concise. And I guess I would want to throw caution in the sense that I think the last thing we want sometimes is duplication of efforts, and the day-to-day operations of the district are under the purview of the superintendent. And I think Dr. Sullivan, I think we can all agree his communication has been excellent to parents and stakeholders. So I think the real quandary is, what is our message and how is our message going to be differentiated from that of the superintendent? We don't want to send out a reentry plan, comments, because that's really not, in our wheelhouse to do so. So I think it's really important that our messaging is distinct and separate and within our purview, and provides a format for community members to hopefully come ask us questions directly, as opposed to asking Cohasset 143 questions, which I think is the source of a lot of bad information, which creates negative opinions and a lot of stress and anxiety that is needless. So that's my concern about this, and not, quite frankly, not wanting to step on the superintendent or his staff toes. And every building principal has their own format for newsletters, and I think the s'mores that was introduced last year, they're graphic, they're visual, they're eye-catching. You want to read them. It's not a 5-page Word document. And so how do we separate ourselves, I guess, is the question that I have. And the frequency of communication as well.
What's your vision, Mrs. Colery?
My vision? Do you really want to know? So what I think is really important is a collaborative approach to this. I mean, I think about the policy subcommittee meetings when we have Dr. Scollins there. It's so much more robust. The nature of the conversation is just, it's better when we have people from leadership at the table. And I believe that the district has already, in leaps and bounds, overperformed as far as communication is concerned over the last year. And I think that it would be really wonderful if we could collaborate more than differentiate, and not in a way that sort of like absorbs the school district's communication, but just in a way that says, how can we help you accomplish your communications goals also, right? And so I think that, this is my, not municipal government, or schools, but communications is my background professionally. And I think that the best way we can hope to accomplish the goals outlined in this charge is through a really collaborative process rather than differentiating ourselves from the district. And I think we have the ideal leadership team in place right now to make that happen. I mean, I don't know that I would have suggested this if our leadership team weren't so communicative and collaborative in everything that they do.
I mean, we can expressly ask Dr. Sullivan, do you feel like it would be something that would be a help or a hindrance to you to have an actual subcommittee on communications that you could, participate with and give input?
I think I really I appreciate everything you're saying. I like the perspective on communication because as much as I've been really trying to get information out there, sometimes I can think I'm doing something, but really I need to do it in a different way. Or maybe there are forums that would be more appropriate for parents. I've already put out that I want to try to do some chats. I haven't really totally vetted that out to get a sense for what format would work. There are a lot of things that the SMORE newsletter is obviously a kind of a passion of mine. I like to put information. It's my way of kind of putting together everything I'm seeing and making sure people know all the things that we need to celebrate here in Cohasset. And of late, I haven't done the SMORE newsletter, but I've been sending out a lot of information that is not necessarily, there's so much joy in. I mean, our theme this year is keep the joy, and I try to put that in our newsletters. But, I don't want to miss the forest for the trees and trying to communicate. And I think Dr. Scollins would say the same thing. We want to communicate well. So it's not just trying to hit one note. So I welcome the committee and the thoughts. And if there are better formats for my communication or a better note for me to hit, I'd want to hear that. And I think the school committee communicating a message of what happens in the meetings and what's happening. I'm all for that. I think this group is so collaborative and supportive that I'm just I'm very open to anything you can do to add to communication in the community. It's not stepping on my toes, really. Now I do have my principals are doing a lot of communicating as well, so I don't want to. I'm hesitant to say over communicate. We want to communicate usefully, and so anything you can help with that would be fine.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Any other comments in the committee before I ask for a motion? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the charge of the communications subcommittee as drafted?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. St. Ange. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Kearney. All in favor, please indicate so in roll call fashion in alphabetical order. Mrs. Colery.
Aye.
Mr. Kearney.
Aye.
Mrs. Marr.
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange, I won't forget you this time.
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan. Okay, so that motion unanimously passes and the communications subcommittee of the Cohasset School Committee is thus created. At this point, I would ask for volunteers for the committee. I think ordinarily we take two, so I think one of them is a foregone conclusion. Mrs. Colery. Who else? I am all set with subcommittees, so I'm good. But if there, hopefully, another one of the remaining three members would like to serve on that with Mrs. Colery, that'd be great.
I can do that. Or I don't want to step on toes if someone else wants to.
Mrs. Marr was also expressing willingness to do it. I mean, it's up to you. Whoever feels stronger about it, I guess. I don't want to exclude anyone. Well, they're usually posted as the whole anyway, right? So everyone can join in if you want to. Who wants to be on it officially, though? Someone's got to say it.
I can officially be on it. Is that okay, Helen?
All right. So
Okay.
Mrs. Cleary and Mrs. St. Ange will be the standing members of the communications subcommittee. All right. Moving on to the next and final item in this agenda section of the agenda, reports from any subcommittees or liaison positions. Any updates or reports? Mrs. Marr.
Just quickly, the athletic reentry subcommittee of the reentry team met yesterday afternoon with athletic director Steve Rotunde. He has the athletic trainer, a couple of coaches, a parent, and myself on the subcommittee. And athletics, as everyone knows, is really governed by what the MIAA has decided. The big topic of conversation is the waiver of Rule 40, which allows for out-of-season coaching, which some leagues around the state are adopting things unanimously, and some leagues are going school by school and district by district. So we will have, as Mr. Rotundi reported last meeting, we'll have girls and boys soccer, girls field hockey, and cross country and boys golf. And he's worked with Principal Scott on all of the in-school, on the field guidance and requirements for safe activity by our student athletes. What we'll be working on next, though, is a policy for the out-of-season coaching, which means the wrestling coach could start wrestling practice, voluntary, of course, in the fall, or lacrosse could start voluntary practice in the fall and carry over into the winter before their spring season. And so based on the number of student athletes we have and how many of them play multiple sports, it could put an undue pressure on certain kids to participate more than is normal and healthy for them to do so. So we had a great conversation about why we want to do sports, and it's not really for the athletic competition, it's for the social emotional well-being for these kids. And so we'll be working on a policy at our next meeting, which is yet to be scheduled, to really outline so our coaches, our athletes, and our parents understand what out-of-season coaching means in Cohasset.
Thank you, Mrs. Marr. Any other updates from subcommittee? Oh, yes, Ms. St. Ange.
I attended the Alternative Energy Committee meeting last Thursday, and there were a lot of very exciting, very technical updates about the big project they're kicking off right now, which we had, of course, voted earlier this year to have them explore using school property for their, oh my gosh, the terminology, I need to look at words. Just for looking for the possibility of using solar. So they are kicking that off and doing a request for proposals out in the community over the next few weeks. I found that the most pertinent information for us, they circled back to the electric buses discussion that had been brought up in the prior meeting. And that is a long process, but it sounds like in about 6 months, they would need to start entertaining that conversation if we want to explore that for our fleet. So that's something that's a ways off, but something that's kind of on their radar.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy, you have some updates?
Yes, I do. Dr. Scollins and I had an awesome wellness committee meeting today. And I got to say, it just gets bigger and better. And, we were off to a little slow start to begin with. However, I just feel like there's such a dedicated team that's in charge of our wellness. Everything from gym teachers to nurses to teachers to, it's just so exciting. And we had just a great conversation. I feel like we're getting a lot of work done in that committee right now.
Yeah, that team is awesome. You guys, you'll start rolling with that. I mean, it's just a matter of just getting things a little more normal, and it's gonna fly.
Yeah. And we do want to revisit the wellness policy, so we'll be bringing that to the policy committee so they can look at it, and we'll bring with us the information that we've collected around that and the assessment that we did over the summer and what kind of finished up today. So.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney. Any further updates? And thank you, Dr. Scollins. Okay, seeing none, moving on to the next agenda section, which is the approval of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes to approve tonight. Thank you so much, Ms. St. Ange, for drafting these. The first is the minutes from the July 22nd, 2020 meeting. Are there any points of discussion regarding these minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion on the floor to approve the July 22nd, 2020 school committee meeting minutes? All members were present, so they can vote on this. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Kearney. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Colery. All in favor indicate so in the roll call in alphabetical order. Mrs. Colery.
Aye.
Mr. Kearney.
Aye.
Mrs. Marr,
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan. Those minutes are unanimously approved. Moving on to the next set of minutes, which is the August 5th, 2020 school committee meeting, at which all members were present and therefore can vote. Are there any points of discussion relating to these minutes? Mrs. Marr.
I just have, it's a typographical error, page 2, 6th line down. And it just says, as the information, as the date, it should be gets, not, that was it. Otherwise, it was very well done.
Did you get that, Mrs. St. Ange? Because I don't see it.
Yes, I have that, and I will make that correction once we're approved.
Thought you could slip that by Mrs. Marr, but there's no getting anything by her. Okay. Any motions on the motions on the floor to approve the August 5th, 2020 school committee meeting minutes as drafted with the with that one edit that Mrs. Marr just made?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Kearney. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Colery. All in favor indicate so in roll call vote in alphabetical order. Mrs. Colery.
Aye.
Mr. Kearney.
Oh.
Aye.
Sorry, I froze. So can we just do it over? Mrs. Colery,
Aye.
Mr. Kearney,
Aye.
Mrs. Marr,
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan. Those meeting minutes are unanimously approved. There are no other meeting minutes to approve, so moving on. There are no follow-up and updates. I do not believe there are any topics that aren't reasonably anticipated by the chairperson within 48 hours. Okay, so there's no basis at this point to move into executive session. So we move on to the final agenda item. Are there any motions on the floor at this point?
Motion to adjourn.
There's been a motion to adjourn made by Mrs. Colery. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Marr. All in favor indicate so in a roll call vote. Mrs. Colery.
Aye.
Mr. Kearney.
Aye.
Mrs. Marr.
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Everyone. Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Aye.